Apocalypse. I can steal superpowers. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 501 Transaction. Mr. Furubada Hiroshi, I understand. Whether Furubada Maki understood or not, and what he understood, was probably only known to himself, but at this time, his attitude towards Furubada Hiroshi was undoubtedly one of respect and fear. Haha, Furuba-san, do you really understand? Furubada Hiroshi took a deep puff of cigarette, then bent down and extinguished the cigarette, but with a spark on the side of the pig's cheek. Even though it was a burn on his face, the fat man was still sleeping soundly under the effect of the overdose of anesthetics, and it even made people wonder if he was dead. Mr. Furubada Hiroshi, I understand. Furuba Maki was at most a bad student who often skipped classes and was idle. He had never seen such a trivial bad behavior, and immediately bowed his head respectfully. Haha, Futani-san, if you really understand, that's good. Dealing with pigs is indeed a bit frustrating, but don't worry, I'm a relative of the team leader, and as long as we accumulate some experience, we'll be able to move up soon. Furuta Hiroshi smiled and patted Futani Maki's shoulder, seeming to be very satisfied with his performance. Futani Maki couldn't help but smile, as if he really believed that Furuta Hiroshi would promote him. Mr. Furuta Hiroshi, I'm willing to follow you. That's good. Futani-san, I heard you have a sister at home? Furuta Hiroshi leaned forward slightly. His voice was so light as if he was saying hello, but this sentence made Futani Maki's body stiff immediately. Mr. Furuta Hiroshi, my sister and I have a bad relationship. We haven't been in touch for a long time. Futani Maki, your words are a bit disappointing. I have no ill will towards your sister. After all, you will follow me in the future, and I have to meet your family. Furuta Hiroshi seemed a little unhappy, and his tone changed immediately. Futani Maki thought of his previous behavior and his voice was very weak. Mr. Furuta Hiroshi, my sister is still in the 3rd year of high school. She will take the college entrance examination soon. I will definitely introduce her to you in the future. Haha, that's right. Then let's do it after the college entrance examination. Furuta Hiroshi is basically an old hand. He didn't plan to do it in one go, but Futani Maki's delay also gave him an opening to directly set the date for the meeting. Okay. Furuta Hiroshi didn't see the expression on Futani Maki's face, and he didn't care. He just patted his head with satisfaction. Mr. Futani, don't think too much. I have no ill will towards you. After all, don't forget that I personally summoned you into the organization, and I'm your guarantor. The relationship between us is just like that of the master and apprentice in the past. We suffer together and prosper together. I'm also hoping for the best for you, and want to become closer to you. I have been paying attention to talents like you for a long time. Don't worry about your sister. I heard that she has good grades in school and even has the hope of being admitted to Hamakura University. Oh, if she is admitted, the tuition will cost a lot of money. The money she earns from working part-time is definitely not enough. If you need it, I'm happy to help you at this time. Furubada Hiroshi seemed to have changed his face. Between the lines, he meant that I have no ill will, and I'm thinking about you. Futani Maki didn't understand the meaning of his words at all, but just bowed his head to express his obedience. Haha, Fuhu-san, don't be so serious. Follow me and you will definitely have a bright future. To tell you the truth, our team leader is one of my cousins. He has a very good relationship with our Hiroshi Minasawa Wakanaka. He will have a chance to move up this year. Hiroshi Minasawa Wakanaka? I've heard of his legend. He wiped out an entire group of the hyena gang by himself and killed hundreds of people overnight. Is this true? Of course it's true. That was 2 years ago. I was a little older than you back then and had just left school. I even went to collect the bodies afterwards. Mr. Furubada Hiroshi, can you tell me about what happened that day? I admire Mr. Hiroshi Minasawa the most. Haha, no problem. Come on, I'll treat you to barbecue today and we'll talk while we eat. Mr. Furubada Hiroshi, no need. What does it matter? Let's go. Furubada Hiroshi was very cheerful. He pulled Futanimaki and walked forward. It seemed that he was going to walk straight out of the alley and find a store on the street to eat. However, on the other side of the alley, a cold figure was standing there, neither moving forward nor backward, just standing there like a ghost. Who? What are you doing here? Because of the distance, Furuta Hiroshi had not noticed anyone on this side. When he got closer and saw GLUO's figure, he took out his pistol without saying a word. Futanimaki was pulled behind him and looked at the gun in Furuta Hiroshi's hand with envy, but he didn't care about GLUO who was on guard. My name is GLUO, and I'm short of money. GLUO held crossing RUO in his arms, and there was no emotion in his voice. He could actually say a pseudonym at random, but, as a traverser, he had no trace in this world at all, and his real name and pseudonym were meaningless. In this case, why did he choose to hide his identity? Mr. Furuta Hiroshi, I have a deal to discuss with you in the black alley. GLUO stood calmly in the middle of the road. There was a lot of space on both sides. If Furuta Hiroshi chose to take a detour, he didn't need to talk to him. However, this is the territory of the Rotten Dog Gang. In order to show off his power in front of his younger brothers, Gucheng Shinheo deliberately used GLUO as a scapegoat, and the safety of his gun was directly opened. Trade? How do you want to sell yourself? Or, the little piglet in your arms? Gucheng Shinheo looked GLUO up and down, and he had an idea in his mind. Although GLUO deliberately used a hood to hide his face, his clothes were extremely ordinary, and he looked dirty and very down and out. This kind of person should not be a gambler or drug addict. He may be in debt, bankrupt, or a loan shark. Anyway, he is just a hyena on the side of the road, one of the future scum. Judging from the sound, he is not very old, and it is impossible for him to get married and have children, but the child in his arms looks about 7 or 8 years old. It is estimated that he was either stolen or abducted. This kind of desperate young people do things without leaving any room for maneuver. Although Gucheng Shinheo disdains, he did not reject GLUO's expression. I don't know anything about your situation. It doesn't matter how the child came. I only care about her gender. Girl. GLUO looked at Furuta Hiro casually and felt a little speechless about the direction of the conversation. However, GLUO didn't hate this direction. He just had some backup plans. Since the situation has changed, then, he doesn't mind expanding his gains. Believe me, Furuta Hiro, this will be a big deal. Chapter 502 Big Deal. Oh. How big a deal can it be? At this time, according to his own experience, Furuta Hiro had already labeled GLUO. Although he felt that GLUO was not a threat, he still remained alert, with the muzzle of the gun always pointed at GLUO's head. So big that you can rise to prominence? GLUO knew in his heart that if he didn't take out something, he would not have the opportunity to see the team leader mentioned by Furuta Hiro. That might not be his real cousin. So GLUO revealed a strand of crossing RUO's hair from his coat. The gradient purple-blue hair was soaked in the color of the source power, which was so conspicuous in the dark that it was even a little piercing. This girl is a realm warrior. Furuta Hiro originally had the mentality of watching a good show, but when he saw the brilliance of the source power, he was stunned, as if he was shocked. Of course, a genuine realm warrior GLUO had a smile on his face. His eyes swept across Furuta Hiro's shocked face, and then stayed on Futanimaki's confused expression. In order to gain the trust of Gucheng Shinheo, GLUO had to put out certain chips. GLUO actually concealed crossing RUO's identity very well, and only let him see a strand of hair. But this small glance basically announced the end of Gucheng Shinheo's death. This person, seeing crossing RUO, and attaching great importance to crossing RUO, must die. On the contrary, Futanimaki, because this 17 or 18-year-old gangster has no experience, and has not understood the value of the source of power just now, so he may still survive. What do you think, Gucheng Shinheo? It's very valuable. GLUO showed a proud smile on his face, but strictly speaking, GLUO himself didn't know what value crossing RUO showed. GLUO borrowed crossing Yan's power. He knew that Lolly Dragon would be powerful in the future, but he didn't know how much attention a creature like Xingqian Dragon would get in the starry sky world. This was a somewhat risky test for GLUO, and it was also a test To stay within the safety limit, GLUO must make sure whether any person in the Senkan world can discover crossing RUO's identity as a starry dragon when they see her. In order to escape in the future and deal with the pursuit of the forces of the desolate god, GLUO must understand the safety range of crossing RUO, which can be regarded as a demarcation of his future direction. And everything is just as GLUO guessed. Gu Changshan Heo, who only saw crossing RUO's hair, did not know crossing RUO's identity as crossing Chenlong, but mistakenly recognized her as a realm warrior. How old is this girl? Gu Changshan Heo swallowed nervously. He estimated that crossing RUO's body should be about 7 or 8 years old, but Gu Changshan Heo was not sure of the correctness of this possibility. Because an 8-year-old realm warrior is too outrageous and unbelievable. I don't know her exact age, but judging from her body shape and bones, she should be around 8 years old. GLUO didn't know crossing Chenlong's age and appearance proportions. He just made up a reason casually, but Gu Changshan Heo was so excited that his hands were shaking. Is this little girl really a realm warrior? She's not a transformer who has awakened her origin talent, but a realm warrior who has truly awakened her origin power. Of course, her origin power is genuine. Furuta Hiroshi, you have to think carefully. You only have one chance to bid. I hope you can give me a satisfactory answer. GLUO was actually very curious about what Furuta Hiroshi was so excited about, but GLUO didn't show it. He stood there calmly and didn't take the initiative to speak. It seemed as if GLUO knew the preciousness of the goods in his arms, so he didn't care about the other party's inquiries and speculations at all, but was sure that the other party would give him a satisfactory enough price. 8 years old, a realm warrior who has awakened her origin power. At this time, Furuta Hiroshi, let alone pointing a gun at GLUO, his hands were shaking, and he didn't care to be shy. He directly took out his mobile phone and dialed someone's number. Cousin, I came across a big deal in the South Alley. A man wants to sell a pig, a girl, 8 years old, a warrior who has awakened the source of power. Cousin, what I said is true. The person is right in front of me, and now he is asking me to make an offer. What? Invite him to come over for a detailed discussion? Okay, I understand. Gu Changshan Heo's phone call was very smooth. After getting the accurate answer from his cousin, Gu Changshan Heo immediately hung up the phone and looked at GLUO with a smile on his face. Mr. GLUO, if it's convenient for me now. It's not convenient. There are too many people here. There's no need to wake her up. GLUO made a gesture of drugging someone and rejected Gu Changshan Heo very sternly. He wanted to take a closer look at crossing RUO's thoughts. Now, take me to see my cousin. If I hold her like this, she won't run away, and you don't have to be so alert. GLUO didn't seem to care about his own safety, as if he was sure that nothing would happen to him. Furuta Heo originally had the idea of trying to test him, but facing GLUO's face hidden in the dark, he gave up the idea of making trouble. Mr. GLUO, follow me now, I will take you to see our team leader. Furuta Heo winked at Futanimaki behind him, indicating that he should follow behind GLUO and find a way to keep an eye on GLUO's every move. I have something urgent to do later, lead the way quickly. GLUO didn't give Furuta Heo too much time to plan, but instead urged him directly. No matter what the leader of the Rotten Dog gang on the other end wanted to do, GLUO would not give him too much preparation time. Okay, Mr. GLUO, the road ahead is slippery, be careful. Furuta Hiroshi is indeed a born bad guy. His attitude changed without any fuss. He just used threats and inducements in front of Fushigi, but in front of GLUO, he was very fawning. Of course, Loli Long didn't know all of this. She didn't even know that she was sold, and she still looked like she was sleeping soundly. The little loli was held in GLUO's arms, her whole body wrapped in a loose coat. The only eye that was exposed was lightly closed, so that people could not see anything unusual. Mr. GLUO, the reputation of our Rotten Dog gang has always been trustworthy. We are happy to make friends with anyone who has the strength. I wonder if you can give us a favor. The role change of Gu Changshan Heo was so thorough that it made people admire him. This person really has no bottom line in what he does. Even if he becomes a disaster, he will never be a simple character. GLUO didn't care about Gucheng Xianheo's flattery at all. Even the temptations in his words were swept away by GLUO's words. Gucheng Xianheo, I just want to complete this important transaction first. There is no need to make other moves. After this deal is done, we will have a chance to cooperate. Chapter 503 Stepping into the Haze. Yes, yes, yes. I'm sorry, Mr. GLUO, I was impatient, too impatient. Gucheng Xianheo was not surprised by GLUO's vigilance, or it was normal to be vigilant. After the first attempt failed, he stopped talking and quietly led the way. GLUO carefully held the lolly dragon in his arms, and his eyes looked back and forth around, while noting the approximate terrain and facilities, and observing the strength shown by the Rotten Dog Gang. After all, GLUO is not very clear about what position the Rotten Dog Gang is in a metropolis like Binshan, and he dare not relax the necessary vigilance. If it were the background of the Earth world, a big city like Binshan, whether it is advanced technology or a large population, should be constrained by a set of regular systems to ensure the necessary stability. But it is very strange that the government of the Senkan world is so incompetent, and such an important metropolis is in chaos. Apart from anything else, GLUO could not have imagined that a gang would dare to blow up people's tires with guns on the street for the issue of protection money, and then force them to resign in person. Whether it is called making a fuss or acting recklessly, the gang forces can be described as lawless. Faced with this situation, GLUO seemed to have no hope for the security of this city. Of course, this chaotic situation also brought convenience to GLUO's plan. Mr. GLUO, go one more intersection ahead, and you will be there. Gucheng Xianheo took GLUO to turn left and right along the way. I don't know if he was deliberately taking a detour, but anyway, along the way, it seems that there are more and more gang members patrolling back and forth. During this period, many people greeted Gucheng Xianheo. From the attitude of the two sides chatting, it can be seen that the gang members have a good attitude towards Gucheng Xianheo. GLUO estimated that Gucheng Xianheo's cousin, who is the leader of the team, is definitely the main reason. Gucheng Xianheo, wait here, I need to check the secret code. When GLUO was about to reach his destination, he suddenly stopped at an intersection. Gucheng Xianheo looked at him puzzledly, but GLUO did not explain to him, but just raised his thumb and raised it as high as possible. Furubadaheo did not ask what GLUO was doing, but just stood aside and noted GLUO's posture with a twinkling eye. No explanation is needed. Even a fool can see that GLUO's current behavior is undoubtedly a greeting to his accomplices in the distance. At such a long distance, and in such a remote position, the other party could actually see GLUO's actions, which undoubtedly shows that there is a sniper among GLUO's accomplices, lurking here somewhere in the dark. The number is likely to be quite a lot. Okay, we can go. After GLUO gave the non-existent friendly signal, he returned to his previous indifference. Furuba Xianheo didn't say much, but his attitude became more respectful. This building is obviously a base of the Rotten Dog Gang. Unlike the dilapidated GLUO imagined, the interior of the building is unexpectedly luxurious. At this time, there are still quite a few people on the first floor. They seem to be processing the hotel's check-in procedures. There are some jargons in their words, which GLUO can't quite understand. Furuba Xianheo led GLUO into the elevator with a brighter smile on his face. He seemed to see GLUO's curiosity and explained it very naturally. Mr. GLUO, my cousin is the #1 general under Hiroshi Minasawa Wakanuka, and he is also the team leader with the greatest chance of being promoted to Wakanuka. This building is the gang asset managed by my cousin. The 2nd to 4th floors are restaurants, the 5th and 6th floors are bars and entertainment, and the 10th floor and above are hotel accommodation. Of course, the most attractive thing is the underground casino that is famous throughout Hamakoa. Further down, the 2nd underground floor is mainly for black boxing and death fights, and there are regular slave auctions on the 3rd underground floor. Furubada Hiroshi obviously wanted to win GLUO's favor, so he did not hide anything about the facilities and layout here. GLUO nodded expressionlessly and did not intend to answer. What Furubada Hiroshi could tell him was probably something that everyone knew. The lower classes of society had no channels to understand this place. The Black Dog Gang still mainly served the rich people in Hamakura City for excitement. Furubada Hiroshi's words sounded good, but with a little thought, the nature of this building came out: black boxing, gambling, prostitution, drug use, and even unconcealed slave auctions. In a way, Furubada Hiroshi's cousin can run this building well, and he is definitely a capable person. Furubada Hiroshi, what position does your cousin hold in the Rotten Dog Gang? Although GLUO was wearing a hood at this time, his face was still exposed. GLUO knew that there must be surveillance cameras around, but he did not mean to cover up too much. After all, he had already arrived at the Rotten Dog Gang's money-making base, and he certainly could not hide himself. Or perhaps, this was also a display of strength. After all, GLUO did not believe that the Rotten Dog Gang could find out any information with his photo. A trader who was unknown and had no information, plus the unknown organization behind him, was already heavy enough. Mr. GLUO, you may not know very well, but the highest position in the Rotten Dog Gang is the leader, and below him is a Ruotao, who is responsible for managing different areas, and below him is a Ruothang, who is responsible for different directions and things. The team leader is generally the executor of a specific job, as well as the operator of various assets and bases of the gang. My cousin is only one step away from being promoted to Ruothang. Gu Changshanheo did not hesitate to brag about his cousin's status, as if he was expressing the strength of his own side, and as if he was hinting to GLUO that there would be huge benefits in cooperating with them. The strangest thing was that when Gu Changshanheo said the last sentence, he took a deep look at the lolly dragon in GLUO's arms, as if his cousin's promotion to Ruothang and crossing RUO's existence were very important. Your cousin is not simple. It takes more than just being good at dancing to run a place like this. Of course, in order to run this stronghold well, my cousin worked hard and risked his life several times. Gu Changshanheo looked at GLUO's young and handsome face. His thoughts turned around, but the expression on his face did not change at all. However, by running this place well, my cousin has also gained a huge network of contacts. I believe that, as long as everyone is sincere, we will definitely get satisfactory results. I hope so. GLUO clearly felt Gu Changshanheo, and he could not wait to be eager. GLUO himself was a little curious why his arrival made Gu Changshanheo so excited. Can crossing RUO, an 8-year-old martial artist, turn the tide of the battle, or can the powerful organization behind him add fuel to the flames? Chapter 504 Guchangshanheo. Ding. Just when GLUO's mind was racing, the elevator suddenly stopped on the 25th floor. Then, Gu Changshanheo made a gesture of invitation, but he still did not move in the elevator. Mr. GLUO, my cousin is waiting for you inside. Fushigaki Maki and I are of low status, and are not qualified to enter this floor. No need, continue to lead the way in front. GLUO stood in the elevator, wrapping crossing RUO tightly in his arms. He glanced at the people waiting outside the elevator, but did not move. This. Gu Changshanheo showed a surprised expression, as if he did not expect that GLUO would let him continue to follow. He looked at the man who was responsible for receiving GLUO with difficulty, as if asking for his opinion. Gu Chang, you continue to lead the way. The person who came to pick up GLUO should be an assistant type person. He seemed to be taciturn and his attitude was impeccable, but it was also difficult to give people a good impression. Mr. Chibarayuki, please help me. Furuda Hiroshi bowed very straight, then walked out of the elevator, solemnly made a gesture of invitation. GLUO nodded and walked out of the elevator. Then, Futani Maki, who had been in the corner, also wanted to come out, but was stopped by Furuda Hiroshi. However, before Futani Maki retreated to the corner, GLUO put an end to these little actions. Let Futani Maki go in together. I'm quite interested in him. Okay. Mr. GLUO, please. Furuda Hiroshi bowed again as if to apologize. Then he walked in front and led GLUO in. Futani Maki, who was at a loss, followed at the back, scared like a little chicken. Compared with the first floor at the entrance, the layout of the entire 25th floor looks simpler, or it does not pursue gorgeousness, but chooses to be pragmatic. There are more than a dozen guards with pistols on both sides of the corridor. They do not look lazy like any gang members, but have a kind of sharpness unique to soldiers. GLUO silently observed the guards along the way, secretly praising his cousin Cheyenne Heo-Gucheng's methods. Not to mention how he got to this position, just the method of controlling his subordinates is definitely worth talking about. Under the bright yellow light, the assistant named Kian Bolanming led GLUO and the other two all the way, and finally stopped in front of a room. Mr. GLUO, Mr. Fumio Gucheng is waiting for you inside, please. Yes. GLUO nodded indifferently, and pushed the door open and walked out. At this time, GLUO did not let Cheyenne Heo-Gucheng follow him in, and Cheyenne Heo-Gucheng did not say anything, as if he was being petty, and walked here on purpose without any purpose. Communications between people will inevitably carry purposes and ideas, but there are always very few people who know when to stop, and have a basis for advance and retreat. Click. After GLUO walked into the room with crossing RUO in his arms, he closed the door casually. The sound of the door lock colliding seemed like a signal, causing the person who was standing by the window looking out at this time to turn his eyes away. Fumio Furuba looks to be in his early 40s, much older than Hiroyuki Furuba. People can't help but wonder if the so-called cousins are fake, or if they are actually father and son. But it is undeniable that Fumio Furuba is by no means a simple person. His eyes are particularly sharp, as if he can penetrate people's hearts with just one glance, and he is completely worthy of the identity of a gangster leader. Of course, this level of scrutiny is of no concern to GLUO, and Fumio Furuba seems to be very satisfied with GLUO's performance. He strode over from the window and took the initiative to extend his hand to GLUO. Hello, GLUO, my name is Fumio Furuba, a leader of the Rotten Dog Gang. GLUO, a nobody. GLUO held crossing RUO in his arms, so he extended his left hand, and Fumio Furuba, who had originally extended his right hand, suddenly paused in his steps, but retracted his right hand, replaced it with his left hand, and shook hands with GLUO. To be honest, GLUO was a little surprised by this handshake. GLUO imagined that he had made Fumio Furuba lose face, and in order to retaliate against GLUO, he should have held his hand tightly to show his power. However, GLUO did not expect that even such an obvious fault finding did not make Fumio Furuba change his smile. Of course, this gangster leader was not a good person. After shaking hands, he sat directly on the sofa next to him without saying, "Please sit down," to GLUO. But unfortunately, GLUO was not a person who followed the host's wishes. He hugged crossing RUO and sat directly on the sofa, and it was very rude. He buried his whole body in the sofa, just like lying on the bed. GLUO, you just arrived in Binshuan City, right? What do you think of this city? Fumio Furuba hurriedly invited GLUO here, but at this time, he acted very leisurely, as if everything was under his control. GLUO nestled in the sofa, covering crossing RUO's body in his coat, and looking at the layout of the house with interest. He looked like a bumpkin from the countryside. Mr. Fumio Furuba, Hamakura City is the largest and most prosperous city I have ever seen, but unfortunately, it is far from being as glamorous as it appears on the surface. Haha GLUO, this world is a contradiction between light and shadow. If there were not so many people to maintain order, this city would not even be able to maintain its glamour. Fumio Furuba looked at GLUO's immature appearance and had already guessed his origins in his heart. At this time, the temptation in his words was also for this answer. Of course, a young man like you is indeed qualified to despise this world. I haven't seen someone who can be so indifferent and speak his mind in front of me for many years. Mr. Fumio Furuba, I'm full and my family is not hungry. I have no way out, and I don't need a way out. GLUO looked directly into Fumio Furuba's eyes. This ruthless leader of the underworld admired GLUO very much at this time. Pa. Fumio Furuba clapped his hands in admiration, as if to express his respect for GLUO's fearlessness, and GLUO's watertight rebuttal also gave him a hint of the answer in his heart. GLUO, if I'm not mistaken, you are from the resistance army. Why do you say that? GLUO could not deny Fumio Furuba's test. He had just traveled through time for less than a day, so how could he talk about where he came from? However, GLUO vaguely understood the reason why Fumio Furuba made such a guess. GLUO, I really didn't expect that you are so cautious and bold at such a young age. Fumio Furuba took out a remote control from his pocket, pressed the black button at the bottom, and then threw it directly on the table. Now, all the surveillance facilities on the 25th floor have been replaced with fake videos. No one will know what we say. Chapter 505 Fumio Furuma. GLUO, let's talk openly. I'm very curious about your purpose. Fumio Furuba clearly asked GLUO to come here to buy crossing RUO, but at this time, Fumio Furuba mistook GLUO for a member of the rebels. Not only did he not intend to discuss the Lali Dragon transaction, but he focused all his attention on GLUO. Mr. Fumio Furuba, didn't I say that I came here today to make this deal? GLUO patted crossing RUO in his coat, and his expression was slightly stiff, as if he was reluctantly denying his identity. Really? Then your deal is really a bit beyond common sense. Fumio Furuba has been staring at GLUO's expression, and of course he noticed the slight flaws he revealed. Fumio Furuba, who felt that he had found GLUO's background, was no longer as solemn as before. GLUO, do you know what an 8-year-old realm warrior means? It means a higher upper limit. GLUO had a stern face, as if he didn't reveal his purpose at all, but at this time Fumio Furuba narrowed his eyes and looked a little angry. GLUO, in this world, whether it is a realm warrior, a wild beast, or a disaster plant, the root of their extraordinariness is the existence of source power. The essence of source power is actually the purest energy. It has no attributes. It is always everywhere, and flows in every corner of this world. The reason why the source power of realm warriors, wild beasts, and disaster plants has different attributes is because the bodies of these creatures have various elemental attributes. For creatures, the essence of the source power manufacturing process is to burn the life and soul of a creature at the same time, transform, fuse, and sublimate. Therefore, the attributeless source power energy is infected by the elemental power in the body of the organism and shows the attributes of various element. No matter how powerful a realm warrior is, the amount of his source power is always subject to the strength of his life and soul. But on the contrary, the wild beasts with strong bodies and the disaster plants that can grow wildly have source power at the beginning of their birth, and as they grow, the source power will grow rapidly and become stronger like a snowball. And humans, because they are born weak, their lives and souls are not enough to give birth to source power, so they need to grow and wait. At this time, Fumio Furuba took out 2 cups from under the table, opened a bottle of tea-colored wine, and filled the 2 cups. GLUO, the explanation is so thorough, so, do you understand? An 8-year-old realm warrior is young enough. At this time, GLUO vaguely understood why Shion Haogu specially asked crossing RUO's age, and was so excited after getting the answer of 8 years old. Haha, that's right, young, incredibly young. Furuba Fumio pushed a glass of wine in front of him, picked up a glass of wine, took a sip very casually, and then raised the glass to GLUO, indicating that he could enjoy it. GLUO, judging from your appearance, the person who sent you here seems to have concealed a lot of things from you. To be arrogant, you don't seem to know me very well, so your understanding of me is too one-sided. Indeed, this is the first time I see you. GLUO picked up the wine glass pushed by Furuba Fumio, did not refuse, raised his hand directly, and drank half a glass. GLUO's current physical strength is not afraid of Furuba Fumio drugging him at all. GLUO even hopes that Furuba Fumio really drugged the wine, so that after he finishes drinking, he can reduce Furuba Fumio's defensive psychology. However, after GLUO drank half a glass of wine heroically, Furuba Fumio still did not show any movement, and his skill in nourishing ki was a bit amazing. GLUO, I think you are a talent. I'm willing to tell you things that the people you obey are unwilling to tell you. So, do you want to listen? It's Milner. GLUO didn't know what Furuba Fumio had misunderstood, but he welcomed this kind of coincidence. After receiving GLUO's affirmative answer, Furuba Fumio drank the wine in the glass in one gulp, and reached out to write the 3 words Jingwas on the table. GLUO, in this world, source energy is everywhere. All kinds of creatures are affected by it, and have the adaptability of source energy at the beginning of their birth. As long as humans are alive, they will subtly absorb the source energy in the air, so that the body and soul can continue to be nurtured and grow in the nourishment of the source energy. Finally, after a long period of nurturing and growth, the life can be fully developed, and the soul can be formed. Then, it depends on one's own ability to complete the unification and integration of life, blood and spiritual soul, and materialize one's own reality, the original talent. After awakening the original talent, humans enter the transformation stage of the transition of life levels. Without any forced growth, they will absorb the source energy in the air at the right rhythm, nourish their life, blood and spiritual soul to become stronger, and finally awaken the source and become a realm warrior. To put it bluntly, source energy plays a decisive role in the process of human life evolution from an infant to a realm warrior. Therefore, the speed at which a human passively absorbs source energy in the air determines how old a person will be for his soul to develop and his life to be complete, how long it will take to awaken source energy after awakening his original talent and entering the transformation stage, and the rate at which he can recover source energy by absorbing source energy from nature after becoming a realm warrior. Fumio Furuba was obviously very happy to see Gluo's surprised expression, or he felt that these knowledge involving the secrets of the world were exactly what Gluo needed to make up for. Therefore, in order to emphasize the necessity of this information, Fumio Furuba knocked heavily on the table and said the other side of this world, the adaptability of this source force, as well as the impact and effect it causes, after being quantified, is the source force adaptation index. It is the most universal method in the world for detecting the talent of a martial artist. To put it more bluntly, it quantifies the value of human beings and determines a person's future. Quantify human beings? Gluo came here to test the truth of this world, and Fumio Furuba also cooperated with him very well. He even told a lot of important information before Gluo used force to threaten him. Source Force Adaptation Index, a quantitative number that uses indicators to determine whether human beings can reach the extraordinary level or remain mediocre forever. It has nothing to do with wisdom, body shape, or personality. It measures the innate adaptability and even denies a person's life without giving him any chance. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 506, The Dagger Revealed. Is the emergence of this technology a blessing or misfortune for mankind? Gluo felt that a door in front of him was completely opened. The filth and unbearableness of this world seemed to have a reasonable reason. When a person is born, his value is determined. After that, he only needs to distinguish and teach students in accordance with their aptitude. That can't be better, haha. Teach students in accordance with their aptitude. Gluo thought about it and laughed. He could think of the result of teaching students in accordance with their aptitude. The resources in the human world are limited. Since the value of a person is already known, there is no need to hesitate. Just give all the resources to those with higher value, isn't it? As for those who have too low source force adaptation index, just give up directly. Someone has to do the bottom level work. Of course, those unwanted garbage must be thoroughly squeezed out of value. It's simply to completely quantify human beings, just like playing a game, dividing people into ordinary, elite, lords, and heroes. Of course, the gold-named heroes will be given priority for any good equipment and upgrade experience. When the heroes have maximumed out their divine equipment, the remaining resources can be used by the silver-named lords, regardless of the amount. All of them will be invested. And below, the blue-named elites can enjoy the remaining scraps. Although they may need to compete and may not be full, they are happy after all, with a goal and an improvement. So, what about the ordinary people at the bottom and the largest number? They are probably the abandoned dregs. Gluo, 5 Source Force Adaptation Index tests are conducted on each citizen when they are 6, 9, 12, 15, and 18 years old. It is precisely to select humans who are valuable enough and talented enough to spend resources to cultivate. At this time, Fumio Furuba has made no secret of his intention to recruit GLUO, or he, the leader of the Rotten Dog Gang, is not as simple as he seems. He, Fumio Furuba, has been running the big gold mine of the Rotten Dog Gang for so many years. The reason why he has not been promoted from leader to middle is not that he can't, but that he doesn't want to. Just a source force adaptation index. A number detected by a mere instrument directly determines a person's life. Why? Why can those with a high source force adaptation index live in the inner city? And we, the rubbish with the low source force adaptation index, can only be abandoned. We can only live in the chaotic outer city and live like dogs. Furuba Fumio no longer concealed his ambition, or the reason why he told GLUO this was that he had already determined GLUO's ambition. Either GLUO agreed to join him, or GLUO refused him and died here. So, Furuba Fumio really didn't lie to GLUO. At this moment, all the surveillance facilities on the 25th floor were replaced with false videos. Furuba Fumio's purpose was to contact the agreed target. GLUO had already seen that Furuba Fumio had definitely misunderstood his identity. This ambitious man had obviously betrayed the Rotten Dog Gang and contacted other forces. For example, the rebels he mentioned. GLUO no longer cared about Furuba Fumio's misunderstanding. Furuba Fumio obviously had a backup plan, but was he afraid? Fumio Furuma, what you said before was just a test. No need to lie, no need to test. Tell me, what do you want to do? Fumio Furuma looked at GLUO's moved expression, thinking that GLUO had finally let out his anger. He said so much, testing and gambling, and finally made GLUO, the young man, expose his true colors. Young people can't sit still after all. It still needs to be honed. When it comes to his hands in the future, he will definitely polish this rough jade and make it his general. GLUO, strictly speaking, everyone in this world can become a realm warrior. However, some people's source force adaptation index is too low, and the rate of passive absorption of source force energy is extremely poor. It may take 50 or even 100 years for them to absorb enough source force energy to allow their souls to develop and their lives to develop completely, meeting the two prerequisites of awakening the original talent. And for humans themselves, after the age of 40, their lifeblood and spiritual souls begin to decline, and they gradually lose the ability to awaken the original talent, and they no longer have the possibility of becoming realm warriors. Therefore, various human forces have set a boundary line separating humans, based on the source force adaptation index of 40 as the standard. It can also be said to be the worst wall between the ordinary and the extraordinary in this world. This standard, in the beginning, was that if a person's source force adaptation index was 40, then the time when he passively absorbed source force energy and promoted the development of his soul and life would be around 40 years old, which was the very edge of becoming a realm warrior. Of course, it is not possible to awaken the original talent at the age of 40, so in order to speed up this process, every school will guide them to exercise and issue special potions to increase the rate of students' source force energy intake. Fumio Furuba said these things as if he wanted to evoke GLUO's resonance, but GLUO was not the person Fumio Furuba imagined at all. How could he resonate with him? But in order not to be exposed, GLUO kept frowning, looking like he was full of hatred and the whole world owed him money. Fumio Furuba really thought his words worked. GLUO. Fangnanan, that's your real name, right? I don't know what method you used to disguise yourself. That's your temperament. I will never mistake it. Fangnanan, your source force adaptation index is as high as 100. But what resources have you got? Think about those so-called famous schools. They use pure attributeless source crystal all lavishly to create high concentration source force energy areas, allowing the children of high-ranking officials to go in regularly for training to speed up the growth of their lives and souls. What a waste and despicable it is. Fangnanan, think about everything you have suffered. You almost lost everything in order to become a realm warrior. But what about those high-ranking officials? Their children obviously have no talent at all, and their source force adaptation index is less than 40, but they deceive their superiors and subordinates, and use all kinds of means to trample on the laws on which human beings depend for survival. Fumio Furuta spoke so passionately, as if he felt the same as Fang Nanen's experience. GLUO secretly admired Fumio Furuta's ability to deceive people. On the surface, his eyes were filled with tears, and on the surface, he seemed to have been persuaded. Mr. Fumio Furuma, if I work for you, what resources can you provide me, and how far I can go in the future? HAA. Chapter 507 Turnaround. Fang Nanen, don't worry, I will never let you down. Fumio Furuba took a deep breath, forcibly concealing his joy, and only showed a confident look. GLUO pretended to be telling the story, as if he was uneasy, and stood up from the sofa. GLUO walked through a row of empty chairs in the room, and walked to a position close to the window. He was able to see the street scene outside clearly through the floor-to-ceiling glass window. It was already late at night, and there were few pedestrians on the surrounding streets. After all, this area was the territory of the Rotten Dog Gang, so many facilities would not be built here, and people entering and leaving were strictly restricted. The neon lights spread across the ground, and the leaves were dyed with colors. The whole city looked very crazy. In the shadowy streets, the leaves were swaying. At the entrance of the alley farther away, the street lights were not on, and the alley was as dark as a giant mouth. GLUO, the government of this country has become a lackey of the aristocratic consortium. We must. Furuba Fumio was painting a big picture for GLUO, but at this moment, before he could tell the real purpose, a shrill alarm suddenly sounded on the entire floor. What's going on? Furuba Fumio suddenly stood up from the sofa, and then Kyan Bolangming pushed open the door with a horrified expression. Team leader, our plan seems to have been exposed. The cleansers lackeys are coming. The government's rotten bastards actually sent out the monster that killed the ghost. The cleansers? When did those good-for-nothing bureaucrats find out? Furuba Fumio obviously couldn't believe that he was exposed, and at this moment, a shrill whistle sounded from the side. And then, the flames roared. Boom. The rocket drew a streak of fire in the dark night and crashed straight into the wall. Then the fire exploded and the whole building began to tremble. And this was just the beginning of everything. The ambushers, who had been lying in ambush for who knows how long, began to show their fangs. Dense rockets flew into the building like toothpicks piercing a cake, and then large pieces of concrete and steel began to fall. Get down. Get down. Fumio Furuba wanted to hide in his safe house at the first time, but under this kind of attack, the whole building was in danger, so where was the safe house? So Fumio Furuba began to command his subordinates to preserve their strength. As the running dogs of the government, the cleaners could not directly destroy a building. After the baptism of firepower, they would always attack. Amid the deafening flames and explosions, GLUO quietly picked up crossing RUO from the sofa, and the star-colored source power completely wrapped the two of them. Then GLUO jumped down from the gap in the building, a 25-story building. An ordinary person jumping from a height of 100 meters would almost certainly die, but at this time, GLUO had already gone beyond the scope of ordinary people. Bang! GLUO fell on a low building and smashed a piece of the roof directly, but he himself was unharmed. GLUO turned over and jumped into the alley, trying to hide his figure. In the dark night, explosions and flames continued, and the sound of gunshots was like firecrackers. GLUO squatted on the ground, listening to the screams not far away. He had no intention of approaching, but just looked to the side vigilantly. Fortunately, this branch of the Rotten Dog Gang was still combat capable. The attacker had been dragged down, and it was not a problem for him to leave secretly. GLUO carefully observed the surrounding buildings and the remote alleys next to it, and finally determined a direction, and began to evacuate quietly. I don't know if it was the result of the Rotten Dog Gang's planning. The surrounding terrain was as complicated as a maze. Because he had to carefully check the surrounding situation, GLUO didn't walk fast. But the more GLUO walked forward, the more he felt a sense of crisis, as if there was a malicious intent staring at him, and gradually approaching. Sniper? GLUO had some guesses in his mind, but he couldn't be sure of the specific situation. He could only walk faster and faster, becoming more and more anxious. A sense of crisis made GLUO speed up his pace. He only took a look at many places, and then crossed them directly regardless of whether there was an ambush. As GLUO evacuated, He was getting farther and farther away from the building and the war, and soon walked to a street waiting for demolition. Perhaps because of the strong execution, there were no nail households in the entire abandoned street, and the street lights at the intersection had been extinguished for some reason. But strangely, when GLUO walked into the street, the extinguished street lights were inexplicably powered on and lit up on and off. A few seconds later, the street lights were horrifyingly restored to their lighting capacity. GLUO stood in the light of the street lights, looking at the particularly deep street, but even if he stood in the light, he could not see any scene in the alley. Only that thick and indissoluble darkness. It seems that something is staring at me. GLUO's breathing became inexplicably rapid, as if he was being stared at by some terrifying monster. GLUO's intuition told him that the thing that was chasing him in this abandoned street had already arrived before him. Did he force me to come here on purpose? GLUO took a deep breath, hugged crossing RUO tightly, stepped out of the circle of the street light, and stepped into the dilapidated street. Because this street is one of the intersections of the main road, it is still quite wide. It used to be an old commercial district in Binchuan City, and most of the shops along the street were open to the public. But now, these shops are all abandoned, the tenants have long left, and there are no visitors, and it looks desolate and dilapidated. Because it is a street for shops, the reserved alleys are relatively narrow. The buildings on both sides are standard 3-story buildings planned decades ago. Without lights, the entire block is completely dark. When GLUO walked into this darkness, a cold feeling lingered around him. The alley was extremely quiet, but a subtle sound could be vaguely heard. The sound sounded like gravel sliding on an iron plate, with a sharp feeling that made people numb all over. GLUO smelled a faint smell of blood. He walked carefully into an alley. The soil under his feet was unexpectedly soft. Obviously, no one had cleaned it for a long time. Boom. In the darkness, GLUO suddenly covered his heart with his hands, and his whole body trembled suddenly. Just a moment ago, GLUO's heart suddenly stopped for a moment, and then beat heavily. A feeling that could not be said to be fear or expectation filled GLUO's heart. GLUO licked his lips, feeling the sudden emotion in his heart, and did not suppress the restlessness of the zinger and blood in his body. Soon, GLUO realized the location of the target. He suddenly raised his head, his pupils dilated extremely, and under the effect of the source power, everything in his sight was as bright as day. Chapter 508 The Unchosen. Who? GLUO shouted angrily, and rushed forward swiftly. As he approached, the strange and subtle sound disappeared in an instant. However, the time GLUO had gained had already allowed him to catch the trace of the bloody smell. In the darkness, GLUO ran faster and faster. The alley was not long, and a normal person could pass through it within a minute. GLUO only took a few seconds to get close to its end. At this moment, the dark end of the alley was blocked by several huge cargo boxes stacked on top of each other. This situation was obviously man-made, perhaps for an ambush, so the cargo boxes were really piled high, completely cutting off the idea of ordinary people passing through. At the bottom of the pile of cargo boxes, a girl in plain clothes was lying there. Her breathing was extremely weak, and her chest was only slightly heaving. Obviously, she was on the verge of death. A vertical wound pierced directly through the girl's left chest, and blood continued to flow out of the wound, but the amount of bleeding was obviously much less than that of a normal person. When he saw the scene in front of him, GLUO suddenly realized that, if he hadn't suddenly barged in, the girl's blood would have been drained, and she would have died. GLUO's arrival obviously interrupted this process abruptly. The best proof is that the wound on the girl's heart was not a huge tear, but a narrow sword wound. This level of trauma on the heart would make people bleed crazily, but the dying girl seemed to be unable to bleed. Vampire? After being stunned for a moment, GLUO rushed directly to the girl. He put crossing RUO down and pressed his hands on the girl's heart, trying to slow down the loss of blood. However, the girl had lost too much blood. At this time, she was just the last lingering, and she might even have only the last trace of consciousness. Who attacked you? What ability does the murderer have? My name is Kaguru. The girl, who was barely breathing, raised her pupils slightly. She seemed to have lost sight, but she seemed to be able to hear GLUO's words. Please, tell the head of the resistance armies, Jiang Zilan branch, Guchang, Wenziyang, deceived. The girl's last words were very slow and soft, and Luo could only vaguely hear 3 or 4 words. Luo nodded vigorously, and the source power spread between his hands, hoping that Kaguru could finish this very important sentence. Puff. However, just as Kaguru tried to use up her last life to finish this sentence, a broken spiked wooden stick suddenly flew over. The force of the throw was so great that the wooden stick became like a javelin, directly piercing the girl's throat, so that she could not finish her last words. At that moment, Luo only felt that he had lost the ability to speak, and all the bites in his throat choked and turned into a heavy breathing sound. Just at that moment, the wooden spikes flying from the side and above were so swift that they pierced the girl's throat in almost an instant, completely interrupting the last warning. Didn't leave. Luo never thought that at this moment, at this place, he would encounter such a thing. When the wooden stick pierced the girl's neck, if there was no source force to block it, the blood she splashed would even spray on Luo's face. I was really underestimated. Luo slowly stood up and wiped the blood off his face with his hand. Then, Luo turned around, raised his eyes, and looked directly at the ghostly figure not far away. Who are you? He was an intoxicating smell, and very sensitive. It's worth my effort to force you here. In the darkness, the male voice was hoarse and vague, as if something was rolling in his throat. He spoke slowly, but Luo still had a hard time listening. I work for the cleanser. You can call me the ghost killer. Who are you? I've never smelled your smell before. It's really too fragrant. Ghost killer? Luo just heard this name. Of course he would not forget that when Qianbo Longming reported to Fumio Furuba just now, he seemed to say that the cleanser was affiliated with the government. And the ghost killer seems to be a well-known minions among the cleanser. Who is this Kaguru? The dim light made it difficult for Luo to see the figure squatting on the windowsill of the small building next to him. The resentful ghost was wrapped in a black robe, completely hiding himself in the darkness. Luo couldn't even see his body shape clearly. She is one of those scumbags who claim to be the resistance army. She lives like a maggot, but pretends to have a disgusting hypocritical face. They all deserve to die. All of them must die. However, today, I'm really happy and grateful to them because of their existence. I can see you here. Ha 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 ha. The resentful ghost laughed wildly, staring at Luo. Luo could even feel the mixed desire, greed, and a certain fear in his eyes. This resentful ghost is eager. This resentful ghost, he is extremely eager for Luo's blood. But because of some reasons, he dared not act immediately. Perhaps he felt threatened by Luo, and the resentful ghost curbed his desire to act immediately. But this did not stop him, looking at Luo with an intoxicated and expectant look. It was as if Luo was a beautiful treasure, a treasure that would belong to him sooner or later. Who are you? I long to get you. Kill the vengeful ghost. I'm sorry, I hate you very much. Luo took a deep breath, swung his body to the side, and stepped his left foot towards the left wall. The star-colored source power overflowed, and the halo and smoky colors in Luo's body surged out. The huge force made Luo directly step on the wall to leave a footprint, and then the recoil force came. Luo's body jumped into the air, and his right foot kicked the right wall again. The recoil force, when Luo stepped on the ground, temporarily made him leave the ground, and the star-colored source power surrounded Luo. When Luo stepped on the right wall, he had already reached the second floor. Then, Luo used his right foot again, and jumped towards the left wall like a sensitive flea. At this moment, Luo leaned his body upward and jumped. His feet stepped on the left wall for the last time. The pressure of the source force made the wall suddenly step, and the originally stacked bricks and stones actually moved, making the complete wall concave downward. Then, Luo was like an arrow from a bow, and under the recoil force caused by his full strength, he punched the black-clothed figure crouching on the third floor window on the right. A warrior at the peak of the 3 blue steel rank. Not bad, really, too good. Your blood, your strength, really makes people look forward to it. Chapter 509, coming like a roar. What a decisive attack. What a good choice. Facing GLUO's decisive blow, the killer ghost hidden in the darkness actually began to laugh. GLUO gritted his teeth and punched down with all his strength. Ding. However, GLUO didn't even see the opponent's movements clearly, nor did he see what weapon he used to block his attack. All GLUO felt was a huge force that was beyond his control and pushed back. At that moment, GLUO even felt that he was knocked away by a rhinoceros. His body was directly blasted away from mid-air. GLUO didn't even react and was completely defeated by the opponent's counterattack. Kalala. GLUO only understood that he was knocked away, and then his body crashed into the window on the second floor, and the window frame and glass were instantly smashed into pieces by GLUO. GLUO only felt a pain in his body. He smashed the window and fell into the second floor of the empty shop. He rolled several times before he stopped. As the peak of the 3 blue steel rank, GLUO, who has 4 times the ability of a normal warrior, was actually hit by someone. GLUO now feels that his right fist, which is inhabited by heavenly blade killing, is indestructible, but it failed at that moment. Obviously, the rank of this killing ghost is much higher than GLUO. Young man, do you feel the gap between you and me? If I had used all my strength just now, you would not have fallen into the window, but directly hit the wall and become a mosquito that was slapped to death in the darkness. The killing ghost, who had always stayed in place without moving, spoke again, and his sarcastic voice was full of joy. Obviously, this killing ghost was not in a hurry to kill GLUO. He longed for the breath of the blood in GLUO's body, but at the same time, he also felt threatened. Young man, let's talk first. Have a good chat. The voice of the killing ghost was full of excitement about the current situation. It was obvious that he was extremely fascinated by the feeling of controlling other people's lives with power. However, GLUO did not intend to talk to the other party for more, because the other party wanted to talk to him. The more the enemy wants to do something, the more he cannot achieve his goal. GLUO turned his head to look at crossing RUO on the ground, then looked up at the killing ghost in the dark, and began to try to evacuate backwards. The place here is a little too small for him to exert his full strength. In order to avoid affecting crossing RUO, GLUO must keep a distance from her. Therefore, GLUO hid his figure in the dark, and began to retreat like fishing. The killing ghost on the other side felt GLUO's building, turned his head to look at crossing RUO on the ground, but ignored her. Obviously, there is some kind of protection on crossing RUO, which distorts her cognition in everyone's senses, making her identity as a star dragon undetectable. Young man, don't try to escape. The ghost killer flew out in the darkness, and the blood-red source of energy lingering around him made him look like a bat with its wings spread. Heh, he really loves me deeply. GLUO looked at the approaching figure of the ghost killer, and he no longer had any scruples in his heart. He began to run back and forth in the old street. After keeping a certain distance from crossing RUO, GLUO broke a wall on the side without hesitation, and got into a dilapidated warehouse. The temperature in the dark warehouse was much lower than outside. Going directly in gave people the illusion that they were in a snowy mountain cave. In the pitch black darkness, the cold and dead silence were as if the place you were in had been separated from the original world. The former warmth disappeared, leaving only the bone-chilling feeling of impending death. Boy, you can't run away. The ghost killer also went directly into the warehouse. After releasing the source power, the realm warrior does have a certain degree of dark vision, but compared to GLUO's night vision ability, that is as clear as day, the ghost killer is obviously much worse. And GLUO is planning to use the visual difference to make up for some of the gap between the two. At this time, Crossing Yan has entered a shaped sleep. GLUO can still summon Heaven's Blade killing, but GLUO can only use it as a weapon. The good times of extracting source power from killing and borrowing Crossing Yan's power are gone forever. Before Crossing Yan woke up, Heaven's Blade killing was just a useful fire stick in GLUO's hands. After all, the Blade of Heaven carries a destiny and is a weapon of the stars and gods. It is simply a fantasy for humans to use it alone. In other words, it is impossible for a realm warrior of at least 4th silver rank to use it normally. The only thing to be thankful for is that GLUO has now mastered the power of gravity. Compared to the previous power of simply relying on kill, GLUO can at least control it. and this has been listed as GLUO's trump card. He does not intend to reveal the means of killing immediately, but decides to test it. If my feeling is correct, GLUO has already restrained his source power at this time, just to create absolute darkness. He actually felt another force when he was fleeing just now. Is it an enemy? Is it a friend? If we can't win quickly, then bet that the person who comes is also an ally. GLUO could feel the desire of the killing ghost for him. This bloodthirsty monster, who knew what had happened, turned into what it is now. GLUO had crossing Yan's blood in his body, that is, the blood of the star dragon. The killing ghost felt this breath, so he was like crazy, gave up his responsibilities, and gave up his previous plan. He withdrew from the main battlefield of the attack on the Rotten Dog Gang, stared at GLUO, forced GLUO, and came to this deserted place. It means he wants to take GLUO for himself. According to this idea, the killing ghost must have rejected all support, so the people who might arrive can only be enemies. Rebels. Your people have been killed, aren't you angry? GLUO felt a little unhappy. He didn't do anything, but he was inexplicably targeted by the monster. You think he is Tang Seng, right? You are still using psychological tactics to attack me. Young man. Stop hiding, it's meaningless. I'm the 8th seat of the Liquidators. If you want, I can let you join the Liquidators. Perhaps the killer ghost was afraid of killing GLUO by mistake, so he did not use the range AoE to smash down, but seemed to be wandering around, looking for GLUO. Young man, I don't have any ill will towards you. I can give you all my strength, money, and women as long as you need them. All I ask is to draw some blood from you regularly. GLUO was so angry that he laughed when he heard the killer ghost's words of persuasion to surrender. Good guy, this killer ghost also understands sustainable development. He probably wants to find out GLUO's true identity first, then capture GLUO and take him back to raise him. Chapter 510, Killing the Resentful Ghost. Just like raising a bear to extract bile, the resentful ghost will provide GLUO with good food and drink, and regularly extract a little of blood. It sounds pretty damn appropriate. Are you fooling a fool here? GLUO was so angry that his teeth itched, but what GLUO didn't expect was that even though his voice was already very low, the resentful ghost in the distance suddenly turned his head and looked at him. Found you. The resentful ghost was wrapped in blood red source power, and he disappeared almost instantly. GLUO's pupils shrank, and he tried his best to move to the side. Snap. GLUO's dodging speed was fast enough, but the weapon hidden in the black robe of the resentful ghost still cut open the left side of GLUO's heart. But fortunately, GLUO dodged in time, and the wound was not deep. After falling to the ground, GLUO immediately took a vigilant posture. The star-colored source power kept drilling into the wound, disappearing like a drop in the ocean, but GLUO's bleeding wound seemed to have recovered thousands of times faster, and the wound disappeared in the blink of an eye. At this moment, GLUO's original talent was the power called Eternal Life, which represented absolute immortality. As long as he consumed the source power, he could recover any injuries on his body. Perfect and efficient. Oh, young man, your original talent is rare. You were injured by my weapon, the Killing Wrath, but you can still recover from the injury. I'm more curious about you. The Killing Wrath ghost no longer hid his strength at this time. The source power of the sub-gold level warrior had entered a liquefied state, lingering around him like a turbulent stream, and the blood attributed true red source power, under this condensation, seemed to have really turned into translucent blood, giving people an indescribable sense of threat. K-Guru, I died in your hands. Just when the Killing Wrath ghost was about to attack GLUO, a line of shouting suddenly sounded above. The next second, the roof of the warehouse was pierced by someone, and a figure came with the sword light. The scene of the man landing was like a stone tablet falling from the roof to the ground. The ground suddenly collapsed under the bombardment of the falling object. The source power from the backlog to the explosion shook the concrete floor into a circular collapse, and then a sword light led the chaotic wind to cut in a circular shape. Source martial arts, G-Feng slash. The sword wind swung out, cutting a gully on the ground, and the assassination attack of the killer ghost like a shadow was also completely dispersed and disappeared under this bombardment. The 8th of the Liquidators, Killer Ghost Hao Yangwen. I didn't expect to see you here. The tone of the speaker seemed to be asking and answering herself. She walked out from the back step by step and finally stood beside Gluo and Killer Ghost. Behead the sinner Jiang Zilan. When this figure appeared, the killer of the ghosts Hao Yangwen actually restrained his just unscrupulous attitude and even took several steps back, redistanced himself from Gluo. I really didn't expect that you shitty resistance army, which was obviously about to be killed, would still engage in internal strife, and in the end, force you to come out and clean up the mess. At the cost of your life, the killer of the ghosts' scarlet eyes were fixed on the lovely woman in front of him. The vigilance and tension were almost at the highest level. Jiang Zilan? Gluo raised his head, and the last words of K-Guru before her death rang in his mind, as if they were talking about Jiang Zilan. She is the branch chief of the resistance army. Jiang Zilan looked to be in her early 20s, and her height was probably more than a head shorter than Gluo, about 1.6 meters, and looked a little petite. Jiang Zilan was wearing a men's suit, holding a long and narrow II sword in her hand. The curvature of the blade was very large, and it looked a bit like the waxing moon in the sky. Because of Jiang Zilan's attack just now, the II sword was now inserted into the ground, half an inch deep. Killing ghosts, I have heard rumors about you a long time ago. Today, let me see what you can do. Jiang Zilan, dressed in men's clothes, stood quietly in place. Her pupils looked a little dull and lifeless, as if she didn't even have focus. It seems that her myopia is a bit high, and she doesn't wear glasses. Ms. Jiang Zilan, your resistance army's plan has failed. Why don't you choose to leave? I promised you that I would never launch a sneak attack. The unpleasant voice of the killer ghost sounded again. This time, he no longer had the previous wantonness, but became restrained. We have lost too many people today. We can't have no results. Jiang Zilan seemed to have made up her mind. There was no big fluctuation in her voice. She suddenly took a step forward, stretched out her right hand forward, and then suddenly pulled it out, pulling the II sword that was inserted into the ground. Just after Jiang Zilan swung the sword, she threw the II sword out again, and the force of the throwing was very great. The concrete ground in front of Jiang Zilan had cracked into a gully, and the ground with the II sword as the center collapsed directly. If the killer ghost hadn't dodged quickly, he would definitely have fallen flat on his face just now. Kill the ghost, you must pay the price for the blood we shed. The woman named Jiang Zilan looked very thin, but the voice she said was so loud, and a momentum burst out from her thin body, and the cold murderous intent made people stand up all over. Here if you have the ability. At this time, the ghost killer suddenly swung his right hand, revealing the fist sword in his black robe. The fist sword was fixed on the ghost killer's arm through the steel fist armor. Under the urging of the scarlet blood attribute source power, the black broad-bladed fist sword trembled again, and even the strange blood-red pattern on the sword spine was bright enough to be dazzling. Jiang Zilan, I have no intention of fighting with you. Don't be stupid again. If you leave now, it will benefit both of us. The disgusting voice of the ghost killer sounded again, and his tone was full of sarcasm and joy. He raised his right hand, and the blood-red source power condensed, and then suddenly slashed towards Jiang Zilan with a real red source power empty blade. Jiang Zilan frowned and slashed with the sword, directly shattering the source power empty blade, and then her figure disappeared on the spot, and a sword light was draped on the way of the ghost killer's escape, preventing him from leaving. Ghost killer, your speed is not as good as mine. Don't think about escaping. It's meaningless. Fight. Hey, just you. Jiang Zilan, you are only at the peak of 4th silver rank. I have already entered V-sub gold rank. Don't be stubborn. Killing the ghost seemed to know Jiang Zilan's reputation. This crazy woman's original talent was extremely overbearing. The result of a fight would definitely be a 1-for-1. He didn't want to die yet. Kill the ghost. Tonight, our plan failed, and nearly 300 compatriots died here forever. As their branch chief, I'm willing to accompany them. Chapter 511 Distortion. We, the Resistance Army, made an oath at the beginning of its establishment, to fight for life and death together. Jiang Zilan, who had never smiled before, smiled for the first time. Her eyes, which were shining with science source power, were vaguely filled with tears. Although her smile was beautiful, it was also grey and dying. Hao Yangwen, fight. Seeking death. In the darkness, the resentful voice of the killer ghost was hoarse and vague, as if something was rolling in his throat. Source: martial arts 100-folds. At this moment, it was clearly the first time that Jiangxilan saw the killer ghost. After confirming that it was an enemy, she did not hesitate or show any mercy, and directly launched an attack in a desperate manner. Without any communication or any precursor, the storm source power around Jiangxilan coiled on the II sword. Her body stood straight. The girl held the narrow and long II sword tightly in both hands, and swung it in the air swiftly, drawing a gorgeous trajectory. As Jiangxilan swung in the air, the light blue source power coiled on the II sword quickly turned into a substantial air blade. A series of half-moon shaped source power air blades hit the location of the killer ghost like a torrential rain. Boom. 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 The continuous source power air blades flew over without stopping. The tearing and crushing force turned the wooden cargo box directly into powder. The garbage mixed in it also turned into dust under the attack of the source power and sprayed everywhere. This is the source power. The source power of each realm warrior flourishes through his life and soul. The source power carries individual consciousness and will not merge with anything. Everything that touches it represents a confrontation with it. The destruction of the source power is not an explosion in the form of dynamite, but a burst, tearing, and invisible pressure and impact at a microscopic level. All things touched by the source power, if they cannot resist, will be instantly exploded and torn into dust, and then splashed under the pressure and impact, and even if they can resist, they will suffer these destructive combined blows. Run away. Jialuo stood a little further away, mentally prepared to take action at any time. He searched the messy open space destroyed by Jiangxilan's dozens of source power empty blades, but did not see the figure of the killer ghost. No. No. Jiangxilan turned her head and looked at Jialuo. After just a glance, she could tell that he was not on the side of the liquidators. Recalling the scene when Jialuo was just being chased by the murderous ghosts, as well as some information she had heard hastily, Jiangxilan did not attack Jialuo. I can feel that he is nearby, but his original talent has enhanced his hiding ability, so it is not easy to find him. Understood. Jialuo thought about it carefully and understood Jiangxilan's intention. He immediately gathered his mind and began to search for the traces of the ghost killer. In terms of combat experience, Jialuo, who was an ordinary person before, was far inferior to Jiangxilan, who was constantly fighting in the resistance army. But Jialuo also has his own advantages. His source power is strong and his recovery speed is extremely fast, so he can squander it unscrupulously. In addition, with a physical ability 4 times that of a warrior of the same level, although Jialuo is not as good as Jiangxilan, he will never be much worse. However, this ghost killer who has only fought with Jialuo once in the field, does not quite understand. Hiss. When the fist sword is swung quickly in the air that is suddenly pushed away will rub against the blade itself, producing a sharp sound line, which sounds like the cry of a crow on the shoulder of the god of death. Jialuo's facial features are far superior to those of ordinary people. When he heard the sound, he had already judged that it came from behind, but just when Jialuo was about to turn around to fight, the sound of the blade colliding had already sounded. Ding, ding, ding. At the moment when the II sword collided with the fist sword, because of the excessive power of the two, there was even a flash of sparks, and then the two clashed rapidly, resulting in a string of brilliant sparks. In Jiangxilan's sight, the killer ghost had completely revealed his true form. His figure was as tall as a wall, and the power of his fist sword was terrifying. After a moment of fighting, Jiangxilan was pushed back by the attacking force, and Jialuo behind her was also knocked to the ground by the impact, because he was not prepared. The gap between the 4th silver level and the V sub gold level is heaven shattering. A hoarse whisper was heard, and the fist sword in the killer ghost's right hand swung directly towards Jialuo, who fell to the ground. Obviously, the killer ghost was still thinking about Jialuo. He had given up the plan to take Jialuo away and raise him as a cow, but wanted to kill the chicken for the eggs and get a large amount of food at one time. Unfortunately, the killer ghost's eager idea seemed to have been seen through by Jiangxilan. It has to be said that Jiangxilan's combat experience is indeed much higher than Jialuo's. She was knocked away and caused GLUO to fall, but when the killer ghost's fist sword attacked the next moment, Jiang Zilan did not choose to pick up the knife to block it again, but pushed GLUO beside her without hesitation and sent him flying away from her. Fuck. At this moment, GLUO was still in a state of confusion, but he had been pushed out from the prone position on the ground by Jiang Zilan. Fortunately, GLUO's mind was stretched very tight because of the battle. Before his body hit the ground, he pushed his palms against the ground, turned around and stood up again. At the same time, the sharp blade in the hand of the killer ghost also chopped Jiang Zilan. Because the distance was too close, Jiang Zilan's action of pushing GLUO away had already wasted too much time. The next moment, the source power protection that had condensed into a substance on the girl's body was cut open like a hot knife cutting butter. Without the blocking of the IAI sword, the sharp edge of the killer ghost's broadsword directly tore Jiang Zilan's source power protection apart. The fist sword cut into her ribs and then directly slashed to the outside of her lower abdomen. Ah. At that moment, Jiang Zilan could almost hear the sound of her own flesh being cut open. The intense pain came over her. The girl clenched her teeth, and there was no fear in her eyes, only murderous intent and rage. She had endured pains thousands of times more terrible than this pain, so how could she be shaken again, because her abdomen was cut open? The IAI sword in Jiang Zilan's hand was upright. Obviously, the fist sword of the killer ghost was still in her body, but the girl seemed unaware that the tip of the IAI sword had already stabbed out. The killer ghost was also frightened by Jiang Zilan's reaction. He quickly took a step back, and the blood-stained fist sword dinged, blocking Jiang Zilan's attack. Jiang Zilan, you are the core of the resistance in Binshuan City. As a branch chief, you should not die here. Leave. I only want this young man, and I will never attack your people again. The ghost killer did not continue to attack, but just looked at Jiang Zilan leisurely, but at this time, the girl had stood up again, without any words. In response, Jiang Zilan directly tore open the hem of the men's clothes on her body, then wrapped it around her waist and abdomen twice, and suddenly tightened it. Chapter 512. At this moment, killing ghosts, I have survived countless battlefields, but it is not by luck. Pain is strength to me. Jiang Zilan gritted her teeth, and her whole body trembled because of the pain. In fact, her lower abdomen had been cut open. If she was not tied up now, I'm afraid that even her internal organs could be seen. But this is not a serious injury. Under the effect of her special original talent, as long as she is not dead, no matter what kind of injury, it will not affect her combat effectiveness. Even as her injuries worsen, all her attributes will continue to rise, and she will become stronger and stronger. Jiang Zilan, how is your injury? GLUO no longer planned to be a bait at this time. He rushed to Jiang Zilan and prepared to fight side by side. I'm fine. Nothing at all. This injury is just a booth for me. Jiang Zilan shook her head, indicating that she was fine. Although she did not explain it to GLUO specifically, she could not cover up some things. After knowing the peculiarity of Jiang Zilan's original talent, GLUO stopped worrying about it. The two stood side by side, looking at the killing ghost in front of them seriously. It was not until this moment that GLUO finally saw the killing ghost's figure in full. After the black robe that covered him was broken, the killing ghost no longer pretended to be mysterious and completely revealed his true image. The killing ghost's body was extremely tall, and his nearly 2-meter figure was like a small wall. His strong muscles held up his clothes high, which looked very scary. The killing ghost wore a black mask on his head, and even had a circle of cloth wrapped around his eyes. The blood red light leaked from the cloth, showing the position of his eyes. At this time, the killing ghost, compared with the crazy breath before, even gave people an illusion of calmness. It was as if his original evil and madness had been restrained, and he had restored the normal thinking ability of humans. The fist sword in the right hand of the killing ghost had also been completely stained by the blood-colored source power. The black broad blade was integrated with the steel fist armor, as if it grew into it. The liquidators obey the government. You rebels are against justice and morality. You will surely perish. The killer ghost's scalded eyes scanned GLUO and Jiang Zilan through the tangled cloth strips. The feeling of being stared at by a predator made GLUO's whole body go hairy. coupled with the killer ghost's hoarse and vague words, it was even more horrifying. What do you think? This reason is not bad. When the liquidators hunted me, they used this reason. Now, I can use it too. It's really pleasing. The world is getting better and better. Killing people and setting fires will get you a gold belt, and repairing bridges and roads will leave no corpses. You only need to be vicious enough and kill enough people to qualify to live. Killing people and setting fires will get you amnesty. You want to go this way too. So, choose either to be tortured to death by me, or to kneel on the ground, offer your fear and begging, to gain the qualification to join us and protect this world. The vengeful ghost looked at Jiang Zilan's murderous eyes, as if he remembered something. His name was stained with blood, but he was able to survive intact and even be recognized by the government. How absurd. How sad. Luo and Jiang Zilan looked at the vengeful ghost, listening to his disgusting tone, and they did not answer. Because, at this moment, Jiang Zilan's wounds were recovering, and the delay was more important than anything else. Through the words of the vengeful ghost, Luo vaguely understood the far away from the operation of this society. What the government is pursuing now is no longer the happiness of the people or the prosperity of society. They just hold the power in their hands and try to keep their power. For this reason, no matter good or bad, as long as there is power, they are willing to accept it and become their running dogs to quell the rebellion and maintain their rule. It doesn't matter how corrupt the society is, as long as they are still at the top, instigating everything they want at will. Kill the resentful ghost. If we really join the Reckoners, what benefits can we get? Luo stared at the killer resentful ghost warily. In order to delay time, he began to try to strike up a conversation. What benefits? The tall killer resentful ghost grinned. Luo could not see his smile, but his scholar eyes inexplicably revealed a kind of smile. Young man, there are too many benefits to be gained. You can kill anyone at will, as long as it is part of the mission. Whether they deserve to die or not, as long as you want to kill, you can kill them. This world is already filthy and everyone lives in pain. If I kill them, isn't it saving them? This world is hell. Death is a relief. A long time ago, I was also a stupid and stubborn fool, but when I abandoned morality and tried to release the desires in my heart, my life became better, and even now, you see, I have gained freedom. Killer resentful ghost laughed happily. His laughter was hoarse and distorted. As he laughed, a disgusting bloody smell permeated his body. I don't know how many people he has killed to have this smell. Young man, Jiang Zilan, you are qualified to be my companions. I have a very magnificent plan. How about joining my plan? You will get everything you desire. No, what we desire is justice. Jiang Zilan suddenly retorted at this time. Killing Ghost turned to look at her with some appreciation. Jiang Zilan, I have heard your name many times. You are also very famous among the liquidators. You led a bunch of small fry and built up the branch of the resistance army in Binshuan step by step from scratch. But, you are too kind-hearted. You can't suppress the desires of your men, because you are reluctant to kill people. Enough, Killing Ghost. I just want to unite all the forces that can be united and try to give them another chance. Jiang Zilan did not have too much regret and unwillingness for the failure of the resistance army today. She was just angry that she overestimated some people. Those who wanted to seize power from her were so unbearable and stupid. It was obviously a feasible plan, but they were messed up by their rough execution. Ha 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 ha. The little leader of the resistance army, who obviously failed to such an extent, still refused to admit it. It's ridiculous. Young man. Just as the killer ghost laughed crazily, Jiang Zilan suddenly turned her head and nodded slightly to Luo, indicating that her injuries had recovered. My name is Luo. I can create a chance for you. Luo nodded slightly and told Jiang Zilan his name, which was regarded as a formal recognition of this ally. Okay. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 513 No Retreat. Kill the resentful ghost. Rats are rats for life. Cockroaches are cockroaches for life. You are only worthy of being with rats and cockroaches, and eventually die in the sewer. GLUO looked at the killer resentful ghost with contempt, and the smile on his lips was extremely contemptuous when he spoke, and his voice was loud and undisguised. Kill the resentful ghost. Look at your current appearance. You don't even look like a human being. What qualifications do you have to get the hope that only humans can have? At this moment, GLUO certainly couldn't have any contempt for the killer resentful ghost. The emotions he showed were actually to provoke the killer resentful ghost so that he would stop hiding and fight GLUO and the others head on. The gap in realm had originally put GLUO and the others in a passive situation. If the killer resentful ghost kept repeating the routine of hiding and attacking just now, GLUO and the others might be difficult to fight. Therefore, GLUO had to try his best to provoke the killer resentful ghost, and his words were extremely sarcastic, trying to make the calm killer resentful ghost fall into a rage. Xiao Yuangui, you said you abandoned morality, but I think you may not have these shining points of humanity, because a truly strong person will not give up on himself, and you just succumb to your cowardice and fear. Maybe. As if it was a sigh, and as if it was a statement, Xiao Yuangui's voice was hoarse and slight. It didn't sound like he was talking to GLUO and the others, but it seemed like he was just talking to himself. The situation was completely beyond GLUO's expectations. Facing GLUO's vicious sarcasm, Xiao Yuangui didn't do anything crazy. Instead, he stood there calmly, and his scalded eyes suddenly flickered. He blinked. But at this moment, Jiang Zilan accurately grasped the moment of Xiao Yuangui's slackness. She swung the long sword in her hand, and her body rushed forward. Source martial arts, broken painting. The narrow and long IAI sword was held tightly in Jiang Zilan's palms. Her body rushed forward very quickly, and she even felt that her hands were left behind. This also caused Jiang Zilan to throw the IAI sword to her side, and when she approached the resentful ghost, the blade in the girl's hand instantly slashed horizontally, and the silver blade light was like a waning moon. The next moment Jiang Zilan launched the attack, GLUO also pointed his finger vertically into a knife, highly condensed the source power, and formed a blade of source power. Star Killer Bad Star Blade. The source martial arts used by GLUO was the only one he learned from crossing Yan. Although it seemed to be a simple blade formed by source power, the source power control ability required made GLUO suffer a lot. But fortunately, GLUO succeeded. He unfolded the sharp blade condensed by the smoke in his hands at his side, then stepped forward and stabbed the resentful ghost with his straight arm. Clang. The dull sound of fighting sounded, and Jiang Zilan's attack could be said to be a sneak attack, which was directly blocked by the resentful ghost. Then, GLUO's thrust was met, and the fist sword in the right hand of the killer ghost swung, not only pushing away the IAI sword in Jiang Zilan's hand, but also accurately hitting the edge of GLUO's bad star blade. With a dull force coming, GLUO was forced to stop his forward charge, and his right hand felt numb. This killer ghost, the power is really not like that of a human. It is not at the level that a V-level gold level can have. It is too abnormal. GLUO, step back. On the other side, GLUO's stagnation did not affect Jiang Zilan. When the IAI sword was pushed away, Jiang Zilan turned her wrist and the knife light was lifted from bottom to top. Ding. This time, the killer ghost finally lost his previous leisure. Facing Jiang Zilan's compact attack, he made a blocking posture for the first time with his fist sword. The source power kept strangling each other in contact, which looked like the incompatibility of fire and ice. When they came into contact, the source power of the killer ghost had been bound into liquid. Relying on the advantage of source power, he successfully blocked Jiang Zilan's attack. But it was at this moment that Jiang Zilan seemed to have discovered the weakness of the ghost killer. In a close-range battle, the ghost killer's speed was significantly slower, which was completely out of her adapted state. Ding. 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 Jiang Zilan no longer held back, and completely burst out with all her strength. The IAI sword in her hand was like a willow branch, and the sword light seemed to turn into a fan dance when she danced. The dense sword shadow slashed at the ghost killer without stopping, locking all his movements in defense, and there was no way to make an attacking posture. Ding. 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 For a while, the clinking sound of the blades rang continuously, and Jiang Zilan seemed to dance in the blades, dazzling and deadly. At this time, GLUO also helplessly discovered that he had no way to insert Jiang Zilan's attack. His half-baked combat power was more like causing trouble for her than to go and besiege the ghost killer with Jiang Zilan. Crossing Yan once taught GLUO how to fight, but the martial arts she taught were all single combat, both one-on-one and one-on-many, but she didn't teach how to cooperate with others when being attacked. GLUO thought about it carefully and realized that his half-baked fighting ability was completely counterproductive, so he didn't cooperate with Jiang Zilan to attack the resentful ghost killer. Instead, he chose to bypass the venue and find a way to attack the resentful ghost killer from behind. Ding. With the sound of the sharp blades colliding, the broadsword in the hand of the resentful ghost killer once again blocked Jiang Zilan's slash. But the girl violated the rhythm she had always followed and suddenly took a step forward, raising her sword high with the recoil force. In the gorgeous science source of power, the girl turned around and slashed, and the resentful ghost killer had to dodge backwards. The horizontal blade light rose up, cutting a huge cargo box in half. As expected of the sin-slaying Jiang Zilan, with the power of the peak of the 4th silver rank, she suppressed me, a warrior who had just entered the V-sub gold rank. What a sharp swordsmanship. The killing ghost looked at the girl in front of him with his scalded eyes. Facing Jiang Zilan's torrential rain of attacks, he kept retreating. Countless cargo boxes and sundries along the way were shattered in the shadow of the sword of the IAI sword. However, even though the killing ghost was forced by Jiang Zilan to not be able to attack and could only passively defend, he never suffered any damage. Ding. In the huge consumption brought by the source power confrontation, Jiang Zilan's IAI sword came forward, and the killing ghost once again blocked the girl's attack. He took a step back as usual. At this time, Jiang Zilan gave up defense and broke her own attack rhythm. Jiang Zilan no longer wanted to suppress the killing ghost. She wanted to decide the winner. With this idea in mind, Jiang Zilan did not choose to approach again, but quickly chose to jump back. The vengeful ghost raised his head in confusion, wondering why Jiang Zilan didn't continue to press him, but at this moment, a star-colored light suddenly lit up from behind him. The vengeful ghost turned his head suddenly, and what greeted him were two narrow and long source force blades that GLUO had accumulated for a long time. Chapter 514 Tacit Understanding. Zerg 8 cuts. GLUO gritted his teeth, and the star-colored source power continued to flow into the bad star blade. As the energy that was the same as the material it formed flowed in, the length of the bad star blade continued to lengthen, and its stability gradually transitioned from condensed gas to liquid. GLUO's physical fitness was quite average, with no shortcomings in strength and speed. He raised the bad star blade high, and the sharp blade, that was a combination of smoke and brilliance, seemed to wrap around his arm. With Jiang Zilan attracting all the attention of the killing ghost, at a moment when the peak warrior of the 3 blue steel rank was not paying attention, GLUO had already prepared the attack behind the killing ghost. The source power filled the bad star blade, and the extended blade was hazy in trance, like a grass stem made of clouds, and it chopped down in the air with GLUO slashing action. Source martial arts, 100 folds. As if cooperating with GLUO tacitly, Jiang Zilan, who had just taken a step back, had the storm source power around her swelling on the IAI sword. The girl swung the narrow IAI sword in both hands swiftly, and half-moon shaped source force blades flew out with the swing, drawing a gorgeous trajectory in the air. Boom. GLUO spun like a dance. The sharp blade shone brightly under the background of source force. The bad star blade chopped straight at the killing ghost, and Jiang Zilan's science source force blade also fell down. The surging source force bombardment destroyed everything around the killing ghost, and continuously stirred up smoke and dust. What? GLUO had just exploded almost all of his source force, and he was a little out of breath for a while. He just felt that he had chopped the killing ghost, and more than one knife. Then Jiang Zilan suddenly inserted the blade into the ground, and supported it with both hands, so she did not fall down, but her knees softened, and she turned to half kneel on the ground. The gap between the V-sub gold level and the 4th silver level is really quite big. Jiang Zilan's breathing was a little rapid, and beads of sweat kept rolling down her face. The source power of martial artist is limited. Although the fierce battle just now lasted less than 20 minutes, she was actually injected with some kind of drug that squeezed her potential. She forced her body to the highest strength and used her source power without sparing, which consumed a lot of her source power. At this time, she was already faintly unable to hold on. Jiangzilan, are you okay? Gluo on the other side recovered very quickly. He was weak for only 4 or 5 seconds, and now he has returned to normal. Gluo stood up again and did not immediately confirm the killing of the resentful ghost. Instead, he bypassed the place where the killing of the resentful ghost stood before, ran quickly to Jiangzilan's side, and helped her up. I'm fine, it's just that the source power is overconsumed, and the negative effects of the drug are coming. Jiangzilan's body was a little shaky, and Gluo hurriedly supported her. Looking at the girl's difficult expression, Gluo felt a little worried. Gluo, how is the resentful killer? Jiangzilan shook her head to indicate that she was fine. She didn't pay attention to her own situation, but asked about the resentful killer reflexively. He should be injured, but it's not that simple. Jiangzilan, if you need it later, I have a way to imprison him once. Gluo raised his head and searched around. He didn't find any trace of the resentful killer, and he was a little nervous. Jiangzilan waved her hand with the source power, letting the wind dispel the smoke and dust. Although there was no light, Gluo and the others could vaguely see where they attacked. The originally flat concrete floor had been broken into a big hole, and the resentful killer's body fell into the hole, and there was no response to his life or death. Is he dead? Gluo stared at the motionless resentful killer and answered Jiangzilan's words with some uncertainty. The resentful killer's eyes were scarlet, and now that he couldn't see it, he must have closed his eyes. Crack. Suddenly, in the silent warehouse, there was a sound of stones colliding. Crack. The sound of broken cement blocks rolling sounded again. At the end of Gluo and Jiangzilan's sight, the tall and strong body of the killer ghost suddenly moved again. Crack. The killer ghost's originally bent waist stood up again, and the light in his scalded eyes lit up again. Although I didn't use my trump card to hide my strength, it's already very good that you can beat me like this. The killer ghost's thick left arm propped up the ground, and his lower body, which was originally sunk into the ground, was pulled out, and his feet stepped outside the pit again. A 4th silver rank realm warrior and a 3 blue steel rank realm warrior can actually do this. It makes people want to recruit them. The killer ghost's voice was very low, but there was no sense of anger. He stepped forward, and Gluo and Jiangzilan retreated cautiously. You guys are really great. Let's put aside the previous grudges. I have a plan that can really change the world, and I want to invite you to join me. When the resentful killer walked forward step by step until he stepped on the flat concrete ground again, he stopped again. Gluo and the weak Jiangzilan also retreated to a distance of 10 meters, ready to fight desperately again. At this moment, the clothes on the resentful killer were already tattered. With a sudden tug of his left hand, he directly tore off the tattered clothes on his upper body and threw them to the ground. In the dark environment, the resentful killer's naked upper body was full of muscles, like a living monster, with strange bones bulging high, and even some lines on the bones could be seen. At this time, anyone who saw the resentful killer in front of him could instantly understand that this 2-meter tall strong man was not naturally grown. The swelling of bones and muscles was so obvious that it was completely beyond the scope of normal human growth. Only this abnormal physical change can explain the monstrous strength and defensibility of the killer ghost. He withstood the full force of Gluo and Jiangzilan, but the killer ghost only had his clothes torn, but there was no scar on his body. Or, he might have been injured, but he recovered in just a few seconds. What shocked Gluo even more was that his previous attack broke the cloth wrapped around the killer ghost's right wrist into pieces, revealing his right hand holding the fist sword. It can't be said that he was holding the fist sword in his right hand, but it can be said that this fist sword weapon completely swallowed up the killer ghost's right hand. The black-bladed fist sword completely fits with his flesh and blood, and the lower part is completely integrated with his forearm. Young man, your name is Gluo, right? I have to say that you and Jiangzilan's attack was fierce and the plan was good. It is really admirable that you can achieve this level without any communication. It's just that the naked and muscular killer ghost twisted his neck, and the sound of bones sounded like a giant beast grinding its teeth. Do you understand why I'm called Killer Ghost? Chapter 515 Fighting. I have repelled the attacks of the reckless 37 times. I can be ranked 8th, because I killed the previous 8th with my own hands. The low and hoarse voice of the killing ghost suddenly rose, and he suddenly raised his head, and his scalded eyes shone brightly. Because the killing ghost was wearing a mask, his face could not be seen, but just hearing his voice, one could imagine his hideous face at this moment. The name of this fist sword in my hand is called Killing the Resentful. The killing ghost raised the fist blade in his right hand with a howling roar. At that moment, the dark broad-bladed fist sword suddenly trembled, and a strange blood star-colored pattern suddenly lit up on the sword's spine. Stop the resentment with killing, and take shape with sound. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At that moment, the fist sword named Killing the Resentful trembled and made a huge buzzing sound. The buzzing sound was extremely creepy, as if an electric drill was stirring in a person's brain. Luo and Jiangzilan couldn't dodge at all, so they could only cover their ears quickly, trying to resist this terrible sound wave attack. However, covering their ears, there was no way to stop the buzzing sound from entering their heads. It was like a resonance, or a mental attack. As the buzzing sound continued to drill into their heads, some ferocious fangs finally appeared. This weapon is a holy object bestowed by God to his apostles in the legend. It has absolute lethality to humans. The vengeful ghost slowly raised the sharp blade in his right hand, and his scalded eyes looked at the pattern light on the ridge of his fist, and he couldn't help showing an obsessed look. Before the vengeful ghost, Luo and Jiangzilan were even unable to get up. Luo, Jiangzilan, did you hear the wailing of those tragically dead humans? They are begging for your salvation. They are looking forward to your power, and they are resentful of your survival. The chaotic words of the vengeful ghost suddenly became louder, and he suddenly raised the sharp blade in his right hand, as if announcing his great mission. This world is already filthy. Those in power must die, and those who enjoy this era must die. Arsehole. You. Luo clenched his right fist, and prepared to summon Heaven's Blade Killing, for the final decisive battle. However, what Luo did not expect, was that Jiangzilan, who was beside him, turned the blade, and stabbed directly at his chest at this moment. Kill the resentful ghost. Jiangzilan felt a mess in her head, and the noisy wailing made her tremble uncontrollably. However, Jiangzilan was not a person who would sit and wait for death. She pierced her chest with the blade with her own hands, letting the blood splash all over her face, just to let herself fall into the state of dying, and burst out all her strength. The next moment, the characteristics brought by Jiangzilan's original talent took over Jiangzilan's weak body. She pulled out the blade from her chest, as if she had lost any feeling, and stood up calmly. Then, Jiangzilan swung the blade in her hand, and then the blue storm source power exploded around her body, and the gorgeous smoke was like spreading wings. The next moment Jiangzilan had swept all the distance and instantly appeared in front of the killer ghost. Ding. The killing ghost did not expect Jiangzilan to still be able to resist. The powerful ability of killing ghost against humans is almost invincible. However, Jiangzilan finally reacted. The fist sword in his right hand collided with the II sword in Jiangzilan's hand, and the force sent by it actually knocked him back a small step. It's really troublesome. After the collision, the killing ghost raised his head and suddenly found that Jiangzilan's pupils had turned blood red. Killing ghost, I will go to hell with you. Jiangzilan's eyes collided with the killing ghost. Facing the killing ghost's equally scalded eyes, Jiangzilan did not have a trace of fear, but a smile appeared on his face. Jiangzilan stepped back, turned the II sword in his hand, and chopped towards the killing ghost's arm, but the killing ghost did not dodge or avoid it. The blade in his hand did not choose to block, but chopped towards Jiangzilan's chest. Obviously, the killing ghost was very confident in his body's defensive ability. He wanted to exchange his injury for his life, and kill Jiangzilan directly. Squeak. The next moment, both sword blades slashed at their targets, and the storm source power on Jiangzilan's body was directly broken. A torn scar spread on her body, and blood splattered. But Xuangui was not having an easy time either. He didn't even have time to deploy the source power protection. When the II sword slashed over, he intended to rely on his steel-like flesh to directly resist. But at this time, Jiangzilan's strength was far greater than before, and the surging storm source power had changed the effect. So, the process of the IAI sword falling was just like a hot knife cutting butter, and it cut a deep scar on Chehuangui's muscular shoulder. Chehuangui, you are the first one, but you won't be the last one. Jiang Zilan's body staggered slightly after the wound was torn, but she gritted her teeth and held her body. The girl was talking incoherently about words she didn't even know, and she held the sword and chopped again like crazy. It's you who's going to die. Faced with Jiang Zilan's fierce attack without any defense, the ghost killer simply gave up the idea of defense. He chose to slash at the opponent like Jiang Zilan. So, before the swords met, there was a sound of blood. This time, even with the protection of the source force, Jiang Zilan's abdomen was cut in half. Her blood-red eyes widened, and she actually raised the sword to slash again. Go to death with me, ghost killer. Jiang Zilan seemed to be crazy. She didn't consider defense at all with the sword in her hand. Instead, she wanted to hurt the ghost killer at all costs. In the fight, Jiang Zilan only felt that her brain seemed to be burning. The storm source force kept coming out of her body. She felt that everything she saw with her eyes had become as clear and slow as daylight. Chapter 516, The Final Strike. As the injury became more and more serious, a beast-like power rushed through Jiang Zilan's body. She even lost the sense of pain and just wanted to vent this power like crazy. So, Jiang Zilan just slashed again. And the killer ghost no longer hid his power at this time. His liquid-like flood source power was fully unfolded, and with the power of his body strength, he suppressed Jiang Zilan in the simplest way of fighting. One knife. One knife. One knife. Jiang Zilan and the killer ghost seemed to have forgotten everything before, and just slashed at each other with their blades. The wounds on their bodies kept opening, and red blood spurted everywhere. If they were not realm warriors, they would have died long ago, but realm warriors above the 4th silver level, because of the existence of the wild beast bloodline, already have vitality beyond humans. The powerful source power supported their bodies to operate. Even if they were covered with wounds, they still maintained the strongest state, but mentally, the two of them seemed to be possessed by demons. Jiang Zilan, I'll give you one last chance. Surrender, or die. Surrender? Go be a running dog for the government? Jiang Zilan could no longer feel the pain. The wounds that were gradually approaching death made her feel like she was burning. Her blood-red eyes were filled with the frenzy of a fierce battle. Jiang Zilan, I have never thought of swearing allegiance to the government until death. I'm doing this for a grand plan, a plan to ring the bell for the world. Killing the resentful ghost originally carried out this battle with a condescending attitude, but now he found that compared to his original talent of strengthening his hidden ability, Jiang Zilan's ability to burn life is undoubtedly a huge help to the plan. He has his own plan, and the government is also his enemy. He has no intention of fighting desperately against the rebels, but he wants to leave as a winner. Jiang Zilan, let me show you what a ghost is. In the blade fight with flames splashing, the two seemed to have become crazy gamblers, and the bets of fighting with swords were constantly pressed on the scales. They were all looking forward to the moment when the other party's chips were clean. The size and strength advantage of the vengeful ghost killer made his attacks always powerful. Compared with Jiang Zilan, he was more powerful, so the damage he caused was much greater. Jiang Zilan, on the other hand, relied on her speed to dodge the fatal attacks of the vengeful ghost killer, and took non-fatal injuries, fighting desperately. However, even though the marks left by each other's blades on each other's bodies were already dense, the confrontation of source power was like a raging fire melting ice, and some flesh and blood were chopped to pieces. But, between the two, there was still no sign of decline. It's just that Jiang Zilan was burning his life, while the vengeful ghost killer had inhuman power. Blood is life, ghost is power. The vengeful ghost killer's body was tall and strong. After the sword blade cut his body, the muscles at the wound would tighten quickly, reducing bleeding and damage, and the recovery speed was also terrifyingly fast. At this time, the wound that Luo had cut before was basically fully recovered. Luo actually wanted to help Jiang Zilan at this time, but this battle was no longer something he could intervene in. The killing ghost that fully exploded the power of the VSUP gold level, coupled with the evil holy relic called killing resentment, each blow was enough to seriously injure Luo. And Jiang Zilan was even more amazing. She was a warrior at the peak of the 4th silver level, and the combat power she showed was estimated to have touched the edge of the 6th gold level. Should I say, worthy of being a leader of the resistance army. So, you just ignore me like this? GLUO has been waiting by the side. Most of the source power in his body was injected into his right hand by GLUO, and the weapon named Heaven's Blade Killing was already filled to the point of being eager to try. However, GLUO still suppressed himself, pretending that he was completely harmless, just a cowardly bystander. Until the agreed moment came. Source martial arts, a knife that will ring the final sound. Jiang Zilan has never been a fool, she just lives for death. When GLUO suppressed her life, she also gave trust without hesitation, and pressed her life together. So, at that moment, the blade of the girl named Jiang Zilan spun, and the source power that was condensed to liquid burst out on her blade. The girl stepped back without warning, and raised her sword. How foolish. The ghost killer didn't intend to give Jiang Zilan enough time. At such a close distance, daring to release a source martial art that required guidance and consumption was simply courting death. So the ghost killer moved forward, and the blood-colored source power on the half-arm long fist sword even had a subtle crystallization state. He was so close to Jiang Zilan that he only needed 0.1 second. No, not even 0.1 second. All he needed was a move. However, he could no longer complete this move. Because, at this moment, GLUO clenched his right arm in front of his chest, and the pattern representing this, Heaven's Blade Killing, was flashing with light. Gravity pressed down like a landslide, and the ghost killer finally paid the price for ignoring GLUO. His muscles and bones were making sounds, because of the strong pressure of gravity, and the forward movement seemed to hit a wall. It's over. Jiang Zilan slashed down with her sword, and the scene of the source power converging turned into a huge blade nearly 20 meters long. Boom. This sword condensed all that Jiang Zilan had left. Her original talent had reached its limit. When the science source power completely broke out, the roar spread like an earthquake, and the old warehouse collapsed like a disintegration. Half of the flying block was turned into ruins under the impact. Puff. Jiang Zilan's body staggered and stood in place, unable to suppress a mouthful of blood. GLUO, who had been prepared for a long time, rushed directly to her side, carried her on his shoulders like a sack, and started running without looking back. Yes, running. GLUO did not pay attention to the life and death of the killer ghost, or he did not dare to confirm whether the killer ghost was dead or not. If the killer ghost was not bragging, the fist sword in his hand, named Killing the Wrath, might really be the weapon given to him by the god of desolation and darkness, the world eater, Tikatera. It is conceivable how terrifying the power it contains will be. But how can humans use the things of the desolate god? The ghost killing ghost's appearance is definitely completely corrupted. There may be no problem with intelligence, but there is definitely a serious mental illness. Think about it, a human being who has been corrupted by the desolate god, and seems to have a world-weary mentality. He wants to make a big news, to sound the alarm for the world. How can that be a good thing? This world is really sick, seriously ill. Chapter 517 Sorting Out. In the grey and decayed streets, GLUO carried Jiang Zilan on his shoulders, and ran harder than charging. He returned to the alleyway he had taken before. Long Lalita, named Xingruo, was still lying there quietly, snoring. Xingruo, why did Les Engsha change your name to Xingan? GLUO felt the slight agitation of Xingan's blood in his body, and couldn't help but gather his scattered mind, carefully picked up Long Lalita on the ground, and then GLUO changed the position of Jiang Zilan on his left shoulder, to make her more comfortable. In the distance, the garrison of the Rotten Dog Gang was already burning with flames that soared into the sky. The roar of rockets had passed, and now it was time for bullets and grenades. Fighting, roaring, screaming. Even though he was so far away, GLUO still felt the miserable situation on the battlefield. This world is really sick, terminally ill, and it can be called the large cities that are the shining pearls on the crown of civilization, and they are so rotten from the inside out. It's simply stinky. Where is the only chance of victory that GLUO mentioned? Although it was GLUO's first day in the Senkan world, the experience of this day really exhausted him physically and mentally. Accustomed to the comfort and beauty of the Earth world, Luo couldn't even stand the chaos of Fan Meng, not to mention the scene of the rampant crime in the Senkan world. However, he couldn't go back for the time being. He might have to stay here for a long time in order to save the future. Les Zengxia, when are you coming? Luo took a last look at the dark south, and then he didn't stop and began to move forward rapidly with the speed of the source power explosion. Although Luo had just arrived in Binshuan City, the information he got from Fumio Furuba was very useful, and it provided a basic direction for his next plan. The entire Binshuan City, for people like Fumio Furuba who were in the gray area, was roughly divided into two layers, the inner and outer layers. The inner layer was mostly humans with a source power adaptation index of more than 40. Because they had the potential to become realm warriors, they enjoyed most of the benefits of the entire city. However, Luo estimated that it was not only the source force adaptation index that was the standard, but also wealth, power, and knowledge, which were hard currencies in any world that could make people live in the inner city. The entire inner city should be considered a rich area, where the public security must be good and the cost of living is high. In order to maintain this glamour, the outer city must be exploited. People with unqualified source force adaptation index, people who got in from outside, and people with different ideas, intentionally or unintentionally, built a dark law of the survival of the fittest in the outer layer of Binshuan City. And for some reason, the government of Binshuan City also turned a blind eye to this situation, and even had a laissez-faire attitude. Guns and cannons were booming in the outer city, and the inner city was full of lights and wine. The army called the Liquidators even took in the ghost killer Hao Yangwen and let him climb to the 8th place. It was simply a little hard to believe. Luo was not a naive fool. His observations along the way had already vaguely revealed some answers. In this world, or in the city of Hamakoa, capital absolutely has great power and influence. In many places, the government cannot control them, so they can rule by means of covert or overt means. The Rotten Dog Gang, the Hyena Gang, these dirty gangs can do large-scale human organ trading, and even need the government to send liquidators and bomb with rockets. There is no support behind them, and Luo does not believe it. On the contrary, Fumio Furuba, the unlucky kid, although he is a team leader of the Rotten Dog Gang, seems to have a gully in his heart and wants to become a hero. For this reason, Fumio Furuba cooperated with the resistance army to do some nonsense. The Fang Nanan he mentioned is probably the contact person on the resistance side. In short, Fumio Furuba misunderstood Luo and made a big mistake. Otherwise, Fumio Furuba would fail. It can be seen from the fact that he recognized Luo's mistake. From the macro to the big picture, his rebellion was discovered, and he was finished. The situation on the resistance side seems to be very interesting. Not to mention Jiang Zilan, a woman who is a bit stubborn. Luo has heard a lot of interesting information from killing the resentful ghosts. For example, Jiang Zilan seems to have established the resistance army and distributed people in Binshuan, but she seems to be in disharmony internally. Someone has set up a new mountain behind her back and wants to replace her. And compared to Jiang Zilan, that person is estimated to be more unscrupulous. He also cooperated with Furuba Fumio and even sent the talent Fang Nanan to Furuba Fumio. But the bad thing is that the leader who wanted to rebel against Jiang Zilan is probably also a fool. After a lot of blind operations, the matter was not accomplished, but caused huge losses to the resistance army. In the end, Jiang Zilan had to come out to turn the tide, but it seems that she didn't save many people and almost lost her life. It is estimated that Jiang Zilan will definitely carry out a major purge when she returns this time. The fool who still wants to turn over and become the master must be destroyed. Well, thank me, Jiang Zilan. Without me, you will die tonight. Luo crouched down and got out of the abandoned street. There were more people in the city with bright lights and wine. Luo didn't dare to see anyone and could only find a remote place to go around. Huh. That's not right. If you think about it the other way around, Jiang Zilan's result. Luo thought at first that the person who wanted to rebel under Jiang Zilan was a fool, but after Luo boasted about it, he suddenly thought of the point. If Luo really didn't show up, what would the ending be? First of all, the one who wanted to rebel in the rebel army must have suffered a heavy blow to his power and prestige. After all, his plan went wrong and caused huge losses to the rebel army. But on the other hand, this person also cleared his suspicion of setting up the trap. After all, it was his trusted men who suffered heavy losses, and he had no reason to do such a stupid thing. As for Jiang Zilan, now that she is the leader of the resistance branch, her subordinates must have been torn apart immediately. If these people want to avenge her, they must realign themselves after the chaos. At that time, it is natural that those who are loyal to Jiang Zilan will become the subordinates of the new leader. Look, it's fair and above board. If all this is planned, then the person who wants to replace Jiang Zilan must have a backup plan. He is well prepared and will most likely succeed in taking the position. Under the banner of revenge for Jiang Zilan, he will reflect on his mistakes and sit on the coveted position. As for the others, Fu Miao Gucheng is dead, and the man named Fang Nanan is probably in danger. The resistance suffered heavy losses, and the entire base of the Rotten Dog Gang was reduced to ruins. All those who knew about it are dead. Isn't this perfect? Hiss. If this is true, this person is a bit cruel. We must pay attention to him. Chapter 518, Shabby Clinic. They say they are the rebels, but they are also plotting to usurp power and playing political balancing very well. Luo is very happy now, because he does not intend to have anything to do with the rebels. This world is hopeless anyway, and he is a boy outside, so he must pay attention to safety. What's wrong with this city? Is it so difficult to find a hospital? Luo carried Jiang Zilan on his shoulders, and the places where his palms touched were all bloody. He had to find a hospital for treatment. It is said that the lives of martial artists are tough. At least half of the blood in her body has been lost. Jiang Zilan should be getting weaker and weaker, but within 5 minutes of the end of the battle, the wounds on her body stopped bleeding, and her rapid breathing also slowed down. Of course, this does not mean that Jiang Zilan is safe. After all, she had just exhausted her vitality in the battle. She must rest for a period of time afterwards, and her recovery ability is worrying. But no matter what, in general, Jiang Zilan survived, but when she can wake up depends on when Luo can find a hospital. In order to find a hospital, as soon as possible, Luo did not hide constantly, but just avoided the prosperous places. Luo, who shuttled back and forth in the sewer alleys, found that there were indeed many drug addicts who were lingering on. All kinds of junk goods also began to wander around at night, and fighting and robbery almost became a copy-paste scene. What is weird is that in this level of chaos, there are still special corpse collectors. They are very patient, and take the temperature of the people lying on the ground one by one with a thermometer gun. Once the person is cold, they will quickly carry him away. What a fortune. This person's body is a little bit raised, the liver and spleen are probably bad, and it can't be sold at a high price. What a place full of human touch. Luo felt that he was simply educated. It is difficult for people living in the Earth world to imagine how low the bottom line of human beings is when the order is completely broken and trampled on the ground, and how terrible this world will be. Hiss. This is just a black clinic. Can it work? Luo deeply felt what it meant to be a lack of medical resources. He ran 4 or 5 blocks and finally found only a clinic with a shabby sign. The environment around the clinic cannot even be described as bad. The old signboard can no longer be lit. Sewage is flowing on the road in front of the door. I don't know if this place is a dangerous building. Anyway, all the shops around are closed. A tobacco and alcohol store not far away is open, but there is only an old man sitting there listlessly. It's quite quiet here. Luo did not continue to wander around, but picked up a few stones from the ground and threw them out with his energy, smashing all the remaining lights. At this time, the whole street went dark. Luo took crossing Ruo and Jiang Zilan to the wall and quietly got into the corridor. Good guy, they are still treating people. I'm afraid the wound will be infected before the treatment starts. Luo was also convinced. This broken clinic was not only built in a dangerous building, but also very dirty. Mosquitoes were flying everywhere, and the smell made Luo hold his breath. But fortunately, in such a shabby place, there really weren't many people coming. GLUO, with one big and one small child, was about to rush into the clinic when he suddenly discovered that the door of the clinic was locked. However, the lights were still on inside the clinic. GLUO looked at the dirty, broken iron door and didn't even have the courage to kick it. He kicked it 3 times. Dung. 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 Be gentle. Be gentle. This broken door can't stand your kicks. Sons of bitches, no matter how many times I tell you, you don't understand. In the clinic, a male voice with a leaky voice sounded. The sound of his slippers could be vaguely heard as he approached, and he cursed. The man walked to the door slowly and began to open the door slowly. The sound of the iron chain of the bolt sounded, but the last lock was not opened directly. Son of a bitch. Say the code. I told you several times yesterday. I want to see if you remember it. GLUO was already angry at the dirty words of the person inside the door, but at this time, the other party still dared not open the door. What stupid code did he need? Bang. GLUO had no intention of speaking at all. He kicked the door directly, and the door lock broke. The iron door collapsed inward, and the man who opened the door flew out directly. A chaotic sound of glass breaking sounded. GLUO walked into the room and found that the idiot who opened the door had hit the cabinet. Because the force of the collision was too great, several specimens and jars on the cabinet fell down, and liquid and glass fragments were everywhere. GLUO seemed to have used too much force in that kick just now. The man smashed the cabinets at the bottom with his head. There was a big cut on his head, and blood was constantly flowing out. He also fainted directly, and the formalin liquid was poured from head to toe. Is this idiot the only doctor? GLUO glanced at the unconscious man, and then walked around the clinic, and found that he was the only one in the entire clinic. It's really unhygienic. GLUO felt that his brain was polluted. He couldn't even express his inner emotions without swearing. This kind of black clinic is probably only in Africa. It's dirty and messy to describe it conscientiously. Fortunately, GLUO found disposable medical mats next to the operating table. He opened several bags and placed Jiangxilin on the operating table. Afterwards, GLUO found a corner of the room that was not easily visible, covered the ground with medical mats, and placed Xingruo on it. After settling the 2 people, GLUO walked to the side of the unconscious man and kicked him twice to wake him up. Hey, what's your name? Ah. As soon as the man woke up, he immediately reached into his pocket, but GLUO stepped on his wrist, and the broken glass on the ground pierced directly into his flesh. Don't seek death. Tell the truth. Sir, my name is Kigami Masayoshi. I'm innocent. Kigami Masayoshi came to his senses and immediately felt the difference in his situation. He was also flexible and instantly turned into a look of fear and flattery and started to shift the blame. Kigami Masayoshi, tell me everything you know. I will judge whether you are innocent or not. If you hide anything, you will be dead. GLUO actually had no idea what the other party was doing, but seeing Kigami Masayoshi's guilty look, plus the fact that he needed a secret code to enter the clinic, there must be something fishy. Sir, I'm really innocent. A few days ago, Ino Mitsuyo, Itatsumomo, and Makio Hidenobu, these 3 gamblers suddenly found me and said that everyone should get rich together. I believed their lies, so I helped them. Kigami Masayoshi thought that their plan was discovered, and without any hesitation, he directly told all his accomplices. While he was talking, he looked at GLUO's face, trying to get away with it. Chapter 519, Den of Thieves. Don't beat around the bush to make excuses for yourself. Tell the whole story. GLUO put a little more force on his foot, and the glass shards that had been inserted into Mugami Changli's flesh began to make a sound of being crushed by bones. Mugami Changli, who was already very weak, could not bear this kind of pain. He began to struggle and made a miserable cry. However, GLUO was merciless. He raised his foot and stepped on his mouth, making Mugami Changli's little thoughts all go back into his stomach. Mugami Changli, it's useless. I have cleared the surroundings. Don't think that anyone will come to save you. GLUO actually didn't expect that he would encounter trouble just by finding a shabby clinic, but now that he has intervened, he must understand what happened. Woo woo woo. You were. Woo woo hum hum hum. I'll give you one last chance. Cherish your life and tell me what happened. GLUO had no mercy on a scumbag like Mugami Changli. This kind of person who bullies the weak and fears the strong is definitely full of dirty deeds. Sir, this matter really has nothing to do with me. It's just that the three people, Jiangyi Mitsuyo, accepted a job and said they wanted to kidnap a college student. Someone helped them to clear the obstacles, and they just needed to take the person away. After Kigami Masatoshi regained his ability to speak, he looked up and down at GLUO. He was a little unsure of GLUO's identity. The boy looked about 18 years old. Although there was dust on his clothes, it looked very new. He should not be one of those people in the mud. Could it be a classmate of Hashizaki Erita? Sir, I really didn't lie to you. I found this a bit unbelievable when I heard it. The target's name is Singzaki Zinayan, the eldest daughter of Huatang Heavy Industry, and she is studying at Hamagua University. You must understand how important Hamagua University is. We can't even get close to that place, let alone rob people. In fact, someone has arranged it and done most of the work. We are just responsible for bringing people here. I just provide a place. Jiangyi Mitsuyo and the other two brought the people to me as a transit station, and soon someone else will take over. If you don't believe it, Jiangyi Mitsuyo and the other three will come over later. You can ask them. We are just like receiving a courier, and we didn't do anything harmful to the world. Kikami Masatoshi tried to mention the target's name, but found that GLUO looked like he had never heard of it. Kikami Masatoshi also understood that GLUO didn't really come to find him. In this case, the injury of the woman on the operating table has nothing to do with their employer. It was just a coincidence. It's okay, nothing serious. I received a career. GLUO looked at Mushang Changli's innocent face, and he had lost hope in this world. He was an accomplice in the kidnapping, and he made it seem like he was innocent. Obviously, in Mushang Changli's mind, this was not a bad thing at all, just a basic job like receiving a career. Mushang Changli, how much benefit did you receive? Not much, just a few $100,000. Mushang Changli obviously felt that this number was not right, but the other party only gave half of the deposit. The four of them had never seen so much money before, so they just divided it up. They had to do this job. People like them really have a miserable life. It is worth it to make so much money in one ticket. At least, they can leave some for their loved ones. Sir, the money has been divided among the four of us. My share has been given to my family. I still have a few $1,000s left. If you need it, I will give it all to you. No, I'm not interested in money. I'm confused. You're not afraid of getting hundreds of thousands for such an easy job? GLUO looked at Mushang Changli's evasive look and became alert. His rash entry into the house was actually an accident in someone else's plan. If Mushang Changli was not talking nonsense, then it was obvious that there might be someone watching around. Spending so much money to let four bastards finish the kidnapping was definitely intended to kill people to silence them. Sir, we bastards always have some tricks of our own. It's unlikely that we can live well, but we can still survive if we want to. You are quite confident in yourselves. GLUO retracted his foot that was stepping on Mushang Changli, kicked his waist and spine, and motioned him to stand up. I'm not going to kill you for now, but I hope you'll cooperate enough. Go and treat the wound of the lady on the operating table. Okay. Don't worry, sir, I'm best at treating wounds. Mushang Changli was getting more and more aggressive. Not only did he get up from the ground, he also kept bowing to GLUO. His flattering appearance was disgusting. Mushang Changli, you look very smart. I hope you're smart enough. If people like you want to survive, they must understand what to do and when to save their lives. I understand, sir. Don't worry, I understand. Mushang Changli had a smile on his face. GLUO gestured for him to treat Jiang Zilan. GLUO walked to the door, repaired the deformed door, and closed it again. Of course, no matter what GLUO did, he always had a mind on Mushang Changli, and Mushang Changli was also sensible. He didn't do anything fancy, but started to work seriously. In such a shabby clinic, Mushang Changli's medical skills obviously couldn't give people confidence, but in this kind of rotten place with all kinds of people, his ability to treat wounds was really first class. Mu Shangchangli first applied medicine to his arm, then walked to the operating table and began to treat Jiang Zilan's wound. Unlike what Jie Luo imagined, Mu Shangchangli did not have any evil thoughts. He did not even take off Jiang Zilan's clothes. He just used scissors to cut the debris around the wound, and then used a special ointment to treat the wound. It is novel to say that the way the Moroccan world treats such a torn wound is completely different from the Earth world. On Earth, you need to clean the wound, disinfect it, then sew it, and apply medicine. But the Moroccan world is not so cumbersome. Under Jie Luo's gaze, Mu Shangchangli first cleaned Jiang Zilan's wound, then cut off the rotten meat, and then disinfected it. Finally, Mu Shangchangli took out a glue-like ointment, applied it all around the cracked wound, then matched the flesh and blood, and applied another potion on the surface of the wound. A magical thing happened. The deep wound on Jiang Zilan's body, which was deep enough to see the bone, seemed to be glued together, perfectly embedded together, without any blood at all. Finally, Mu Shangchangli used a special bandage to wrap the wound. In just over 10 minutes, all the wounds on Jiang Zilan's body were healed. By the time the bandages were finished, Jiang Zilan had become a mummy with only her head exposed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 520 Ordinary Things. This is really a bit magical. Jie Luo has been staring at Mu Shangchangli, and he has memorized the entire process of Jiang Zilan's treatment. Mu Shangchangli was indeed not bragging. He has been in the outer city area with swords and shadows for many years, and his ability to deal with external injuries is indeed amazing. Mu Shangchangli also answered several questions raised by Jie Luo without hesitation. After completing Jiang Zilan's treatment, he even took out his most valuable instrument and examined Jiang Zilan. Sir, there is a signal transmitter in the left ankle bone of this lady, and now, it has started to work. Mu Shangchangli looked at the flashing prompt on the screen, and smiled a little ugly. The signal transmitter in Jiang Zilan's body is not a cheap thing that is everywhere. This kind of signal transmitter, which was once used in aerospace and submarine, costs nearly 1 million yuan per piece. Those who can bury this kind of transmitter in their bodies can be considered big shots in Binchuan City. Because this kind of signal transmitter is not only rare in number, but more importantly, it needs to be modified and adjusted when implanted into the human body. The whole operation is extremely difficult. The whole set is more expensive than the signal transmitter. Sir, I didn't activate the signal transmitter. It was automatically activated when the time came. Someone used a special signal receiver to search for her. I couldn't block it. It's okay. She and I are in the same group. You don't have to be afraid when someone comes. After all, Jie Luo saved Jiang Zilan. He still had a good impression of this little leader of the resistance army. After all, the two of them had fought side by side, and even the coordination of that attack could be regarded as entrusting their lives to each other. Jie Luo didn't feel strange about the signal transmitter in Jiang Zilan's body. After all, she was the leader of the resistance branch. In order to facilitate rescue and search, it was really good to have a way to find her. Mu Shangchangli, when do you think your 3 accomplices will come back? Jie Luo yawned, showing a drowsy expression, while Mu Shangchangli was extremely energetic. It could even be said that he was too energetic in the middle of the night. Sir, Jiang Yi Mitsuyo and the others said they would be back around 11 o'clock, so it should be soon. Really? That's good. Jie Luo sat on the chair, his right hand supporting his cheek, and he looked like he had fallen asleep. Mu Shangchangli, I'm thirsty, go get me some wine. Okay, wait a moment. Mu Shangchangli was as attentive as a lackey and ran in to get the wine. Although the small clinic was built in a dilapidated building, there were several suites inside and outside, and the place was not small. The outside was the place for diagnosing patients, so naturally there would not be any household equipment. The things in the refrigerator and wine cabinet were all in the back room. Jie Luo sat on the chair, watching Mu Shangchangli leave with interest, and his eyes secretly glanced out of the window, and he couldn't help frowning. At this time, GLUO felt a sense of being watched, and it was obvious that someone had already set his sights on him. Or it could be said that everything was too coincidental. GLUO had just run out of the wolf's den and got into the tiger's den. The people who hired Mu Shangchangli must be quite powerful. Their target is the young lady named Zingzaki Zinan. In order to ensure the smooth progress of the plan, these people really monitored the small clinic. And GLUO, as an unexpected troublemaker, was naturally targeted. In this case, we can only delay time. GLUO's original plan was to take Jiang Zilan away directly after her injuries were treated. But Mu Shangchangli's words gave GLUO a new choice. Since the signal transmitter in Jiang Zilan's body has been activated, the rebels should arrive soon. After all, Jiang Zilan is also a small leader of the rebels. There must be many loyal subordinates. If they all come to rescue, will they still be afraid of these guys outside who hide their heads and show their tails? If Mu Shangchangli didn't lie to me, GLUO naturally wouldn't listen to Mu Shangchangli's one-sided words. He pressed his knuckles on Jiang Zilan's ankle bone, and the subtle source of power penetrated into her body. Sure enough, he felt the special frequency fluctuations in the bones. Next, joined the resistance army. GLUO just ran to the Senkan world today, and he didn't know much about this world. GLUO didn't plan to make a decision immediately, find a force to join, or seek asylum. But now is the right time. GLUO has to consider the benefits of the resistance army. First of all, the resistance army suffered heavy losses this time, and it must need fresh blood. As a warrior who is about to break through to the 4th silver level, GLUO will definitely not be eliminated. The key question is there a future in following the resistance army? Well, definitely no future. GLUO looked at Jiang Zilan's character of fighting to the death to avenge his subordinates, and knew that the resistance army was a dead end. Maybe he could do something, but such a person who was not ruthless enough would definitely not go far. However, GLUO didn't plan to go all the way to the end. I have no money in my pocket, I don't know where to eat the next meal, and I don't have a place to stay at night. I can't live on the streets and hang out with those people. GLUO saw those bad people in the alley today, and he hated wandering. Doing the same thing as these people, GLUO felt insulted. Moreover, to be honest, crimes are happening all the time in this world. GLUO felt that his encounter with Mu Shangchangli was not a special case at all, but the biggest rule of the entire outer city area is that there is no order, and there are crimes and evils everywhere. He just encountered something else when he changed places. The end of the entire world of Senkan world is the destruction of the world. No matter how long it will take, no matter how long it can last, this kind of sign has already emerged half a meter high. Then, let's just hang around for now. GLUO saved Jiang Zilan after all. The favorability of the resistance force is not respectful, but at least friendly. GLUO is penniless now, so he will just hang around with them and look for a job while he can. At worst, he can change jobs later. Anyway, GLUO's current goal is nothing more than to find Ning Zinan and Le Zengxia, one by one, and do the same thing. Sir, here is the wine you requested. Kigami Masayoshi ran out from the inner room, holding a tray with a bottle of brown wine and a glass of wine with ice cubes and lemon. Thank you for your hard work. GLUO sat there like a young master. He had no intention of testing Kigami Masayoshi. He directly picked up a glass of strong liquor and drank it all. Hiss, it's quite strong. GLUO actually didn't drink much. Kigami Masayoshi's wine was probably the kind that could light a fire. After drinking a glass, GLUO felt a burning sensation in his esophagus. Sir, you are generous. Kigami Masayoshi was also shocked by the way GLUO drank, but he reacted quickly. He licked it, and then poured another glass for GLUO. Kigami Masayoshi, you added something to the wine. The taste is not right. Chapter 521, The Same Darkness. GLUO held the wine glass that was refilled in one hand. He looked at the flattering rotten man in front of him with a disdainful look, as if he was looking at an ant, as if GLUO would crush him to death if he was unhappy. Sir. No. Really not. My life is in your hands. How dare you do anything? I just went to the inner room to get the wine, and I didn't contact anyone. Mu Shangchangli thought he was a knowledgeable person, but he had never seen such a degree of power in GLUO. It was not the power of being in a high position or killing many people. It was, just like other species, the kind of innate suppression of human beings, the pressure of the high race. Really? Jialuo narrowed his eyes and looked at Mu Shangchangli shaking like chaff and felt something in his heart. Obviously, he, who was at the peak of the 3 blue steel stage, had reached the limit of the human race and began to move towards the 4th silver stage. Normally, in order to become a warrior of the 4th silver rank, humans need to fuse the source crystal of the wild beast, make it their own, disaster corpse, accept the wild and primitive blood and power, and create new source crystals in their bodies. But Jialuo is different. At this moment, he already has the blood of crossing Yan in his body, although it is a bit awkward to say, and even a bit erotic. But the fact is that Jialuo, who has reached the pinnacle of humanity, is integrating the blood of the star dragon in his heart bit by bit, becoming a being beyond the mortal world. But, Mu Shangchangli, this wine doesn't taste right. Did you cut onions with the knife that cut lemons? Yes. I cut the onions I ate this morning with this knife, and forgot to wash it. Mu Shangchangli immediately nodded his head like pounding garlic. He didn't really want to be Jialuo's dog, so naturally he had the intention of tipping off. But fortunately, Mu Shangchangli has 2 advantages. One is that he is afraid of death, and the other is that he is shameless enough. So when he took out his cell phone, Kikumi Masatoshi suddenly thought that the group of people who worked for him also wanted to kill him. He had prepared a backup plan, so maybe he could survive it, but he hadn't prepared for Jialuo's side. So, don't pick a fight. Jialuo shook the wine glass in his hand twice, glanced up and down at Kikumi Masatoshi, and then put the wine glass back on the tray. Kikumi Masatoshi, you are very smart, and didn't let me make a mistake, but I hope you are smart enough. I understand. Kikumi Masatoshi smiled like a dog, but before he could express his feelings to Jialuo, the door of the clinic was suddenly knocked. Kikumi Masatoshi, open the door quickly. We are back. Kikumi Masatoshi heard the sound outside the door and immediately shuddered with fear. Then he looked up at Jialuo and asked for his opinion in a low voice. Sir, Jiangyi Mitsuyo and the others are back. Go. Jialuo gave Kikumi Masatoshi instructions with his mouth, and then he stood up and followed Kikumi Masatoshi to the door. Kyugami Masatoshi, hurry up. Makio Hidenori is injured. Here I come. Kyugami Masatoshi did not mention the secret code this time. He directly unplugged the door chain and opened the door. Ino Mitsuyo, what's going on? Where's Tatsumomo? Damn. This Ashizaki Erita is worthy of being the eldest daughter of Huatang Heavy Industry. There are so many secret sentries. Although the employers have basically blocked them, some people still found opportunities to get through. Tatsumomo was shot dead. The first person to enter the door was not only tall, but also loud. He was carrying a large cloth bag on his shoulder, and it could be vaguely seen that there was a person in it. Tatsumomo is dead. One less person to share the money. Makio Hidenori was also shot. You should deal with it quickly. Oh. Okay. Kyugami Masatoshi walked into the house with Ino Mitsuyo and the other person. By the way, he carefully glanced at Jialuo at the door. Ino Mitsuyo was a careless person and did not notice Kyugami Masatoshi's abnormality. On the contrary, Hidenori Makio, who was holding his side in the back, saw at a glance that something was wrong with Masatoshi Kigami. He was a black-hearted man. As soon as he entered the door, he raised his gun directly to Masatoshi Kigami. Sir. Masatoshi Kigami's ability to survive was indeed first-rate. As soon as he saw Hidenori Makio's move, he immediately covered his head and shouted out Jialuo's existence. You bastard. Jialuo had already made preparations. His figure flashed, and Hidenori Makio, who had just passed the threshold, didn't even have the chance to pull the trigger and fell directly to the ground. Fuck. Your mother. Mitsuyo Ino had obviously practiced martial arts. At the critical moment, he directly threw the person on his shoulder to Jialuo. He really exerted all his strength. It is estimated that if the thin girl fell to the ground, even if she didn't die, she would be half dead. At that moment, Jialuo's eyes flickered, and he paused in his forward rush. He caught the bag thrown by Jiang Yi Guangde with both hands in the air. At the same time, with the force, GLUO spun his body and kicked sideways in the air. Bang! Jiang Yi Guangde was just an ordinary person. How could he react to GLUO's speed? He didn't even raise the muzzle of his gun, and he lay directly on the ground. This time, GLUO showed no mercy. Jiang Yi Guangde was kicked in the cervical vertebra by GLUO, and his neck was directly twisted to 90 degrees. The spine was moved, and it was obviously impossible to survive. In the original plan, GLUO wanted to knock out the two people and save their lives, but Jiang Yi Guangde was really cruel. He thought GLUO was the employer and would care about the life of Xingzaki Zilan in the bag. So he wanted to throw the girl to death directly, hoping to divert GLUO's attention and give him the opportunity to raise his gun and kill GLUO. But unfortunately, their cruelty did not bring them a turnaround, but a direct death. However, this also reminded GLUO that the people in the Morikang world are really different from those in the Earth world. They are all used to killing, and there is no mercy under their hands. They all kill with one blow. In the days to come, no matter who GLUO faces, he must not show mercy. Sir. Mu Shangchangli looked at Jiang Yi Mitsuyo, who died suddenly on the ground, and his fingers trembled a little in his sleeves. It's not that he didn't think that GLUO was a realm warrior, but Mu Shangchangli never dreamed that GLUO was not just a realm warrior of the bronze level. At that moment, GLUO burst out at such a speed that Mu Shangchangli didn't even see a residual shadow, just like teleportation. And looking at GLUO's relaxed look, it is obvious that this is not his full strength. In a rotten place like the outer city of Binshuan City, a realm warrior of the second black iron level, a person who can ignore bullets and shells, is simply a killing machine, more terrifying than a tank. Kikumi Masayoshi, you've disappointed me once. I hope you won't let me give up next time. GLUO ignored Kikumi Masayoshi's sophistry, put the cloth bag in his arms on the ground, and opened the lock on it. Chapter 522 Professionals. People like Kikumi Masayoshi were just workers for the forces behind the scenes. Even the big cloth bag that contained a Shizaki Erita was prepared by them. GLUO was thinking of releasing the person normally at first, but after tearing open the outermost package, he suddenly discovered that the layers of nesting dolls inside the bag actually contained miniature life support devices. The petite girl curled up in the bag, and a special small oxygen generator was constantly running, and there was even a ventilation fan running at the opening. This is too professional. GLUO reached out and pressed the combination lock on the bag twice, but the lock prompted that the password was wrong and locked directly. GLUO looked at the red light on the combination lock, and the first thought in his head was, it's broken. I seem to have done something incredible. At this time, let alone the participant Kikumi Masayoshi, even GLUO, a passerby, could see that the reason why the group behind the scenes kidnapped people was definitely not as simple as extorting ransom. Those people really valued the people in the bag too much. When GLUO was about to tear it, he found that the whole bag had anti-collision measures similar to airbags. GLUO grabbed both sides of the bag and tried to tear it. With GLUO's strength, let alone pockets, even thin steel plates can be torn directly, but the bag was only broken a little, and it didn't rot. It's outrageous. GLUO didn't want to be this strong. He used all his strength and tore the whole bag into pieces. However, this was only the outermost layer of the bag. GLUO tore 3 layers in succession before finally seeing the unconscious girl in the bag. The eldest lady named Xingzaki Zilan was obviously a standard oriental beauty. Her long silky hair was tied into beautiful double ponytails. Her fair skin was glowing with a warm jade color. Even though the girl was still asleep, the beauty of her body still made people unable to look away. Kimu Masatoshi, is this the person? GLUO confirmed the girl's condition and found that the girl was indeed just asleep, with no other signs of poisoning. Yes. She is a Shizaki Erita, the target required by the employer. Kikumi Masayoshi was a little bit in a dilemma before, but now the overall situation has been decided. He has completely abandoned his previous companions and joined GLUO's army. Sir, the combination lock is completely locked. It may also have the function of sending messages. The person on the other end may. Kikumi Masayoshi can be said to be a very professional lackey. He even reminded GLUO of the key points that he ignored. GLUO was stunned for a moment, nodded, and picked up the girl in the bag. Kigami Masayoshi, you are sure that the employer wants to kill you, but you still dare to take this job? Do you have any backup plan? GLUO carried Shizuki Erita to the operating table and put her together with a mummy like Jiangzilan. The operating table was a bit crowded for 2 people, but it could barely fit them. Sir, there is a tunnel in the room. Kigami Masayoshi no longer played dumb at this time and directly revealed his trump card. GLUO nodded and was about to say something when footsteps suddenly came from the corridor. Push them both to open the door of the tunnel. Don't leave yet. GLUO reached out and pushed Mu Shangli, asking him to prepare to retreat immediately, and he went straight to the door. Let me see how good you are. While moving, GLUO's body rose and fell with his long breaths, and every bone and muscle adjusted to the best state with the will to fight. In the corridor, 6 figures holding rifles were approaching the door of the clinic. They were fully armed and well equipped. Obviously, if Zinki's in iron hadn't been in the house, these people would have bombarded with heavy weapons long ago for her safety, and there would be no anti-terrorist posture like now. In this world, kidnappers are more professional than the army. GLUO had already walked to the side of the door. Because of the door blocking the door, the kidnappers who were about to enter the door did not notice GLUO's approach. But these people were indeed elite enough. When they entered the door, they were in an international standard anti-terrorist assault formation. It was just that GLUO's speed was too fast. Before the first person could shoot, he was slapped away by GLUO. Then, GLUO rammed into the chest of the second man, using that man as a meat shield, and started to push forward directly. Ding, ding, ding. In an instant, the sound of rifles firing rang out. Because GLUO was close to them, they were afraid of accidental injuries, so they did not wantonly pour out firepower, and kept adjusting the muzzle of the gun. Even with such caution, the poor man who was used as a meat shield by GLUO was still shot twice by his accomplices. Even with a bulletproof vest, the man was basically finished. On the contrary, although GLUO deliberately did not use his source power, his strong mental perception allowed him to perfectly grasp the situation. Even though it looked a little dangerous, this absolute control made the tip of the knife licking blood perform so perfectly. Amid the chaotic gunfire, GLUO threw away the meat shield in his hand, then leaned forward and grabbed the nearest muzzle. The man frantically pulled the trigger, but could only sweep a row of bullet holes on the roof. Then, GLUO kicked him on the knee, breaking the kneecap directly from the front. When the man fell towards GLUO, he was pushed into the muzzle of the gun that was aimed at GLUO. The next moment, GLUO dodged the vertical line of the bullet and the blood splashed by the injured person. He had already rushed to the corridor at this time. GLUO pulled the iron door on the side and tore it off and threw it hard. Bang. 6 fully equipped elite soldiers, only 2 of them could move at this time, but this door was stuck on their faces, and the person who was closest to the mouth and had the most bullets lay directly on the ground. I surrender. At this time, the soldier who killed a friendly soldier with his own hands actually chose to throw away his gun and surrender. Of course, there was no bullet in his gun, and it was stupid to hold it. I don't accept surrender. GLUO didn't give him a chance to play 2 sides. When he just pulled out the dagger and pistol, he punched him in the face, and the bridge of his nose was broken into the horizon. A warrior of bronze rank I? You are not from Huatang group, right? Now I will give you one more chance. Leave. I will not attack you. At the entrance of the corridor, a burly man with a scar on his face came over. He reached his hand to his waist, threw the pistol on the ground, and walked forward alone. My name is Dasao Changai. I'm quite famous in the outer city. If you have heard of me, you should know me. This is your only chance. Dasao Changai. A warrior of bronze rank I. So arrogant? GLUO is no longer the same as before. All the battles along the way were with people with good fighting ability. He saw through Dasao Changai's strength at a glance, but the result made GLUO a little confused. When did a warrior of bronze rank I speak so arrogantly? Chapter 523, Stealing Master. Is it because I opened it the wrong way, or is it that all the warriors in the Morikang world are so arrogant? Thinking of this, GLUO was a little curious about the rules here, so he decided to suppress it to the level of a normal bronze level warrior, to test the quality of this Daso Changai. Looking at his appearance, he might really be famous in the outer city area of Binchun. GLUO decided to carefully evaluate the strength of a normal bronze level warrior in the Morikang world. I only use a quarter of my physical ability, don't let me down. GLUO didn't mean to talk nonsense anymore. His body directly moved forward with the step, while Daso Changai took a step back, then turned around, and swept his legs. Snap. GLUO crossed his arms, to block Daso Changai's spinning kick, but the power that exceeded his made GLUO unable to stop taking a step back, and the next second, Daso Changai's straight punch was here. It's 20% stronger than the power of a normal bronze level warrior. GLUO quickly withdrew his arms from defense, his body slightly retreated, and his hands grabbed forward, and Daso Changai's forward fist was caught by him in the impact. GLUO did not hesitate for a moment, and twisted his hands directly. If the opponent did not respond, then this arm would be directly disabled. Not bad. Daso Changai's face was indifferent. He stepped towards the side wall at the moment his right hand was caught, and his body actually turned in the air with GLUO's knob. But Daso Changai's body suddenly crashed forward at the moment of landing, and GLUO, who was using all his strength between his hands, began to retreat under the force. It must be said that GLUO's battles all the time actually have the meaning of attribute crushing. He now has silver blood and 4 times the physical attributes of normal humans. But now, when GLUO suppressed himself, and even fell behind Daso Changai by 1 or 2 levels of strength, his lack of combat experience was revealed. Of course, GLUO had to admit that this Daso Changai was indeed good at fighting, and was worth observing. Daso Changai, I now believe that you are somewhat famous in the outer city. GLUO still held Daso Changai's right hand with both hands, and refused to let go, but his body strength was insufficient, and he was pushed by Daso Changai, and crashed into the door of the clinic. Young man, you made the wrong choice. Daso Changai seemed to have already determined his victory. While smiling, he continued to push and shove. He pushed GLUO from the front of the corridor and hit the door on the side of the clinic with a bang. Because I just reached the second black iron level 2 days ago. Daso Changai had been suppressing his strength before, but at this time he couldn't help but feel proud, revealing a hideous smile, as if his evil plan had succeeded. During the grip, a light yellow smoke glow spread from Daso Changai's body. GLUO was also happy to cooperate with him, pretending to be defeated and screaming. Despicable. GLUO's expression looked full of anger. Although he held Daso Changai's arm, he failed to stop Daso Changai from swinging his right hand. Wrapped in the source power of earth attribute, Daso Changai's fist hit GLUO's chest. GLUO's body paused in place, then took 2 steps back, and made a painful expression. When GLUO's breath was disordered, Daso Changai stepped forward, pulled back his right arm, and swung his left fist straight at GLUO. Bang. At the last moment, GLUO squatted down like a conditioned reflex, allowing Daso Changai's fist to hit the door. Daso Changai's full strength attack, determined to win, directly blasted the locked security door open, and GLUO, who was bent over, was not ready. The next moment Daso Changai's front kick was raised. Damn it. GLUO let out a scream, pretending that his stomach was spasmed after being kicked hard. Then he used the impact to crash into the room, and his head deliberately hit the small table, and all kinds of bottles and jars on it fell down with a clatter, and the sound could not be stopped. Young man, you are not bad. I will give you another chance. Follow me and I will make you stronger. Daso Changai walked into the room with his head down, and was about to show off. Unexpectedly, GLUO, who was leaning on the table, suddenly rushed forward when the distance was right. However, Daso Changai ignored GLUO's attack, and just swung his right fist. The source power condensed by the smoke and light seemed to indicate the power of a warrior of the second Black Iron realm. GLUO still maintained the level of an ordinary bronze realm warrior. His body with the door wide open was hit directly on the chest. As expected, Daso Changai's momentum seemed extremely swift, but these attacks on Jialuo were meaningless. Jialuo didn't even feel the pain, and could only pretend to retreat. Little kid, don't make a mistake. Daso Changai stepped forward, suddenly turned around and kicked sideways, kicking Jialuo in midair again. Bang! Jialuo's vision spun around, and he was forced to hit the sofa, which was overturned by his impact. Then his head hit the coffee table, which broke, but Jialuo's forehead didn't even turn red. You fought well. Jialuo really admired Daso Changai in his heart. This man must not have practiced any particularly powerful martial arts, just pure combat experience and combos. But Jialuo could feel that his attacks were very rhythmic, and each time was just right and continuous. This grasp of the rhythm of the battle made Jialuo feel very novel, so he gave Daso Changai more opportunities to let him show the key to this skill. If you weren't a running dog, I would really admire you. Jialuo touched his chest and pretended to have severe pain in his sternum. He also coughed a few times and spit out a mouthful of saliva from his mouth. Obviously, it was impossible to bring this blood. Idiot. This world is like this. It's not shameful to join the strong. Daso Changai was like a cock with its feathers blown off. He had originally planned to use his mouth to make Jialuo surrender, but he stopped right there. He took a step forward and kicked Jialuo with a whip kick. Really? Your expression doesn't look like that. Jialuo blocked Daso Changai's whip kick with both hands and kicked to the side. Daso Changai was also angry at this time, attacking continuously, with no rules for the coordination of punches and kicks, but it happened to appear at Jialuo's weak point. Your fighting style is interesting. Jialuo was kicked back 2 steps by Daso Changai, pretending that his body couldn't hold on, and his vision began to blur. How did you do that? Jialuo panted hard, and on the outside, it seemed that the fatigue and pain in his body were like a tide that was about to drown him. Hey, is that weird? This is a special skill I created that belongs to me alone. Dynamic combo. I will examine your means of attack, defense, and counterattack, and then use the momentum to guide you. Before you know it, you will be under my control. Chapter 524 Disappointing. You think you want a punch, but I'm actually guiding you to do it. Your every move is under my guidance and scrutiny. What right do you have to fight me? After beating Jialuo back, Daso Changai did not continue to pursue, but quietly put his hand into his pocket and pressed a button used to send a signal. Obviously, at this point in the battle, Daso Changai also found that there was something wrong with Jialuo, and the problem was very big. Young man, I'll give you another chance. Retreat. I won't pursue it. Daso Changai didn't know whether Jialuo was hiding his strength or Yuanchu was particularly talented, and he was already alert in his heart. After sending a signal to his allies, Daso Changai stepped forward, and his right fist, which was full of source power, hit Jialuo's face directly. Pa. Hey. That's enough. You're still hitting me in the face. What? Although Daso Changai was careful enough, when Jialuo no longer suppressed him, he could only watch his fist being slapped away by Jialuo. Then, a heavy force came, and Daso Changai's body actually flew backwards. Are you hiding your strength? Daso Changai landed lightly on the ground. He looked down at his right fist, and found that he was not injured. At that moment, Daso Changai could confirm that there was absolutely no source power on Jialuo's right arm, but how could he take his attack, even intact? Okay, Daso Changai, stop bragging. Your attack is so weird because of your source talent. Jialuo wanted to learn from Daso Changai at first, but after being beaten, Jialuo felt that he was cheated. Daso Changai's source talent should be more like the mind, and he is very clever in grasping the situation, which makes every attack of his very smooth and accurate. I thought you were a genius, but you still rely on metaphysics. Daso Changai, you really disappoint me. Really? Same here. A wild smile bloomed on Daso Changai's cheek. Facing Jialuo's abnormality, he was not timid at all, but had an inexplicable expectation in his heart. In Daso Changai's opinion, Jialuo's original talent should be physical enhancement. There is nothing to be afraid of. What's the use of an attack that can't hit anyone? Daso Changai felt that he was very good at operation. He could kill GLUO with a random show. He dodged the attack and hit the fatal part with every move. How could he lose? Young man, I'm waiting for support. What are you waiting for? Daso Changai suddenly grabbed the small table next to him with both hands, easily grabbed it, and threw it directly at GLUO. Then he stepped on the ground with his right foot, and his body jumped into the air with the recoil force. His posture turned, and the light yellow source force gathered. His left foot chopped down behind the small table that fell. Daso Changai, guess it. GLUO clenched his right fist at the moment when Daso Changai moved forward, and the source force flowing with his mind began to flow into his right arm, and then he returned his elbow and closed his fist. GLUO's right arm, with its star-colored source power interwoven, was like a beast. The air around his arm suddenly condensed, and then the gas spun into wind and began to compress and surround. The power of the flesh that exploded with all its strength had already broken through the limits of humans. You might die with this blow. Come on, you have to do it. When the small table was close to him, GLUO suddenly swung his fist to the side, and the depressed breath in his chest completely dissipated. The source power compressed between his arms became a gushing out as his fist was swung out. The flow of a large amount of air seemed to make the area around his fist a vacuum, and the suction and repulsion were constantly stirring. Bang! The sound of the airflow vibration was unexpectedly small. The falling small table was smashed by the airflow before it approached GLUO's fist, and then the fist continued to move forward and collided with Daso Chang's heel. Until this moment, the suppressed airflow completely exploded, and the sound reminded people of the sound of a balloon bursting. Daso Chang's source power was directly defeated, and GLUO's fist with terrifying physical strength accurately hit his heel. Catcher. Daso Changai's originally ferocious face changed color instantly at the moment of collision. The force that GLUO fed back to him had completely exceeded his endurance limit. The sound of the broken bones of his feet spread, and Daso Changai's body was also blasted to the roof by the irresistible force. It was like being hit head-on by a truck, or being picked up by a running rhinoceros. Daso Changai's whole body slammed into the roof, and the sound of bone fractures rang out on his body. Then the recoil force made this famous person fall directly to the ground. Is this level? Waste of expression. In order to respond to Daso Changai's pretense just now, GLUO still maintained the posture of swinging his fist. After nearly 30 seconds, he breathed a sigh of relief, which seemed to mean that he had finished the fight. On the ground, Daso Changai's left foot had been completely broken by GLUO, and his ankle bone was even terribly twisted. His entire left hand was pulled, and the left side of his forehead was bleeding. He lay on the ground, trying to take advantage of GLUO's carelessness to crawl out of the room. GLUO didn't care about Daso Changai's actions. He walked into the house, turned on the faucet, washed his face, and then walked out again, and followed the bloodstains into the corridor. Among the scattered corpses, the ceiling lights on half of the corridor lit up after flickering, and the thin bloodstains on the ground were rubbed into a mess by the clothes. At the end of the bloodline that seemed to be drawn by a brush with ink exhausted, Daso Changai was still crawling forward. He didn't look back, and he also cared about GLUO's pursuit, as if the end of this corridor was his home. Daso Changai, don't crawl, you can't run away, come here, talk to me. GLUO hooked a rifle on the ground with his foot, and then he pulled the trigger casually, making a series of bullet holes on the ground. Daso Changai, who had lost one arm and one leg, stopped immediately. Daso Changai, come here. GLUO moved his fingers, and Daso Changai, who had crawled to the door, stopped for a moment, hesitated for a moment, and still crawled towards GLUO obediently. Where are your teammates? What's going on? Why haven't they come yet? GLUO looked down at Daso Changai, who was lying on the ground, his expression leisurely and lazy. Just now, an enemy suddenly appeared, and they are fighting with the enemy. The situation is critical. Daso Changai laughed awkwardly. He slowly got up from the ground and sat down with difficulty. Those people seemed to be the rebels. Daso Changai wanted to continue to conceal it at first, but facing GLUO's glance, he still told the truth obediently. Although these people who came out from the inside are cruel and ruthless, they have no psychological pressure to defect when they are defeated. So, Daso Changai, who is behind you? Chapter 525, Changshan Group. I can tell you, but I can't live if I say so. Daso Changai spat out a mouthful of bloody phlegm. The expression on his face was like a madman crying and laughing. The corners of his mouth were still bleeding, but he didn't feel any pain. I can tell you, but I want to follow you. Guo thought of Daso Changai's refusal to surrender, and also thought of his direct exposure, but Guo didn't react. He just bowed his head and wanted to join him directly. If you can't beat them, join them. I plan to follow the resistance army. Are you sure? Guo lowered his head, but didn't immediately reject Daso Changai, because it didn't matter whether he accepted it or not. Anyway, he would be thrown to the resistance army to deal with it. Whether he could become a useful person or not depended on Daso Changai's luck. I'm sure. Daso Changai stretched out his hand to wipe the blood off his face. The expression on his face completely disappeared, as if there was only a pool of dead water left. Okay, I agree. Guo raised his head and looked at the emotions flashing in Daso Changai's eyes. He was actually a little bit of unspeakable admiration in his heart. This Daso Changai must be somewhat famous in the outer city of Binchun. If a person like him who comes from a dirty background wants to obtain resources and continue to climb, he must serve others as a dog. Because in this world, the channels for upward mobility have been completely blocked, and most of the resources have been divided up by the ruling class. They have been fed with these resources and fattened up. Whatever leaks out of their fingers, those talented and capable people rush to serve them as dogs in order to get food to feed themselves. It is conceivable that when society has evolved to this state, even dogs are involuted, and people with a background like Daso Changai are directly treated as consumables and are constantly eliminated in the form of raising goo. Only those who survive in the end are qualified to enter the hall and get rid of their dirty background. It's all just to survive. Some people live a life of drunkenness and dreams in the alleys, relying on drugs to survive, and naturally some people work hard to cross the class and want to be treated as human beings. Daso Changai, can I ask you, why do you work so hard? I want to be a human being, upright, and be treated as a human being. Daso Changai used some strength to climb to the window next to him. He supported himself on the window frame and slowly stood up on one leg. I was born here. My mother is a prostitute. No one knows who my father is. I have no household registration and nothing can prove my birth and existence. If someone like me wants to survive, I can only rely on stealing. When I was a child, I was caught countless times, insulted, beaten, and humiliated. No one treated me as a human being. Later, when I grew up, I could only survive by being ruthless and working hard. I worked hard like a madman for more than 10 years, and only a few days ago did I get the olive branch of Changshan Group. When Daso Changai talked about himself, he was obviously calm and indifferent, as if he was talking about someone else's story. This kind of thing, people like him, is too normal and too common in this world. Every year, hundreds of thousands of children born in the outer city have similar experiences to him. Children like them, who are like rats and cockroaches, could only barely get a bite to eat, and they had to take it from the garbage dump or other people's full buckets. Drugs, alcohol, they were not qualified to use those things. Even if they had them, they would definitely hand them over to the boss, or sell them in exchange for food. If they were sick, they would just endure it. If they couldn't survive, they would just wait to die. If they died, they would be taken away by the cleaners. If they were fresh, they would be sold to medical schools to teach students how to dissect and study the human body. If they were not fresh, they would be sold. If their organs could be used. If they could not be used, they would be made into specimens. If the bones were intact, they could also be sold. Anyway, medical students would need them. In this world, their existence could not be considered human beings at all. They had no household registration, never paid taxes, and were not recognized by the country. That's why Daso Changai wanted to become a human. Changshan Group. Guo didn't feel anything about all this at first, but when he heard the word God from Daso Changai, Guo immediately reacted. Normal people rarely put the word God in the name of their group. Even those who believe in God feel that this behavior is a bit blasphemous and will be punished. People who don't believe in God think this behavior is stupid and will not consider it at all. In a world that is targeted by the god of desolation, the dark god, the world eater, Tikatera, can it be so simple to have a group with the word Changshan? Changshan group is very big, very big. It is a huge group with a worldwide reputation, and its assets are calculated in trillions. It is an unimaginable large group. Daso Changai was obviously a little proud that he could become a thug of such a group, but Daso Changai was smart enough, so his tone was very calm. He had just joined the Changshan group, and he had to betray it in order to survive. How could the Changshan group tolerate him? As for GLUO, since the rebels were standing on his side, he could barely trust them. Although the rebels have not developed well in Binshuan City in recent years, their leader, Zan Zedui, Jiang Zilan, has a very good reputation and is a trustworthy person. Daso Changai felt that he could not die now, so he could only choose a way to live. Now one of his feet was almost useless, and other parts were also seriously injured. The Changshan group did not lack thugs like him, and would not spend a lot of money on consumables for treatment. They would most likely directly dispose of them. However, the resistance army was said to be very short of people. Although he had just reached the second Black Iron rank, he was still a second Black Iron rank warrior anyway. In a place like the outer city, there were not enough resources. To get to this point, Daso Changai had to fight for more than 10 years with his life and blood. Therefore, Daso Changai believed in his own value. As long as he joined the resistance army, he would be reused. It was nothing more than fighting hard in another place. Daso Changai was confident. He had a good reputation over the years. The resistance army would definitely treat him and welcome him to join. Of course, the magnificent psychological and ideological ups and downs of Daso Changai did not affect GLUO. GLUO was not interested in Daso Changai. He only focused on the problem of Huanga and Shenming. Oshoma Sakazu, why does the Changshan group want to capture Hashizaki Erita? I don't know the details. I just heard something about the end plan. Oshoma Sakazu had already adjusted his mindset at this time and had completely become a reserve for the resistance army, so he spoke freely. The end plan. It sounds amazing. GLUO touched his chin, feeling that the Changshan group was making a big news. Sir, when I joined the Changshan group, there were a lot of thugs with me, and it seemed that there were a lot of people they wanted to capture. A lot. How many? I estimate at least 400 or 500 people. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.